We are live. Yes. Yes, we are. This is ever so exciting. This went almost too smooth. So I'm gonna withhold my enthusiasm here for a little bit and see and wait for people to actually get on the live stream to make sure that it's actually going. Because technology just never runs this smooth for me. Never, ever, ever. I have had so many horror stories with technology. My whole life, really. But especially the past week, it's just been an absolute nightmare. So, for those of you who are on my support group on my website or going to my website, you probably know a lot of the technology issues I've been having as my forum. I think it might be back up though now. My forum is down. I've been trying to migrate my website. My website's been down. It's just been a hot mess. I can't even tell you how many hours I've been spending trying to not get very far, apparently. Like to try to figure something out, and it just you know technology and me. Just it's like oil and water. It just does not go together. So let's see. Oh, we've got people. Doug, of course, is here with the timestamp. Thank you so much, Doug. It is great to see you. MeZZ, Society Page, Kevin, BBR, Ryan. Hey, Ryan. Alex, Sylvie. Lots of people are here tonight. So welcome, welcome. Kai Cools is here. You're so welcome, Sylvie. I'm glad to be able to do this. So let's see. I missed part of a conversation. I'm trying to keep up with the scrolling here. Let's see. Sweet. BBR says, meetup support for narcissistic recovery went great. I now have about 13 members and the word is getting out. That is awesome. Congratulations. She said, oh, okay, I made sure that I gave you their website and the YouTube channel to members as a reference as well. That is awesome. And thank you for doing that. So if you haven't already, and I've been having major website issues for, really it's been going on the past month that I've been trying to move my website from one host to another. So everything website related has been having issues. My forum, my email, everything. So if you haven't, or if you have, I should say, if you've already emailed me with like the name of your group, or if you guys are starting your own website or whatever you're doing, please email that to me, Dana@thriveafterabuse.com. And I'm making a note of it now. I'm going to have to go to like this specific folder within my website to find it, but I will. And I was on working with my forum and tech support and all of that again for several hours today. So hopefully we're at the tail end of this and that it will be up and running like it's supposed to be. It would be like if somebody else was running it. That's the goal. Like if it was actually to work properly, that's the goal. Hopefully the next week. So kind of along those lines, really quick, I have some exciting news for some people. I received a couple comments last week by some people who were, we were like on the same page. So they were saying it's, the live streams are long. I get that. I do them long for a reason. So they're 3 hours for a reason. And I guess for a couple of reasons, but one of the main ones being is that was the feedback that I got early on from people that they really wanted something that was long, because some people were using these live streams to help them fall asleep at night, or some people were listening to them while they were driving. So that's one of the reasons that we do go so long. And another reason, of course, is that it's people, due to time zones and everything else, people hop on and off the live stream as their schedule allows. And so my goal is to be able to get as many questions as answered and to kind of cover the wide range of topics in every live stream, so that people, if they're brand new to the live streams or to what we're doing here, that they can kind of hop on at any time and get their questions answered or get support. So my original thinking was that they wouldn't have to wait for a certain live stream on a certain topic. So if we just did a live stream on, let's say, how to go gray rock or flying monkeys or specifics like that, if we only did that once every so often, I don't want them to have to wait in order to get that clarity and that support and the feedback. So that was my original thinking behind it. I totally get how seeing a 3-hour video would be incredibly overwhelming to somebody. And I know for me, when I go to YouTube, I have the attention span of a fruit fly. So I tend to scroll past anything that's really longer. Like 11 minutes is about my max, and that's pushing it. So I'm sure that we're losing a lot of people because the live streams are so long. So the solution, hopefully, is there is a gal that I know, and I'm super excited about this. Her name is Kristen. I don't know if she's here tonight or not, but she normally is. She normally doesn't actively participate in the chat, but she is here. She and I got to talking, and I was telling her, this is the issue. It's overwhelming for people. There's a lot of ground covered in 3 hours every single week. And so she's going to be part of the team, and she's going to be cutting up the live streams according to question and answer. And then we're going to make these into specific videos. So every live stream, over however fast I guess she works. But my guess is it's probably going to take her a while to go through all of this. But they're going to be then further split up into, 12, 15-ish or so videos based on each question, each answer. So that way people can then, people that do want specific questions and answers can then go back through and find that topic specifically. So I'm really excited about that. I think the people that were expressing feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of content and the conversation was all over the place, I think that's really going to help. So, for those of you who are new to me or to the channel or anything else, I guess first and foremost, welcome. But also, I guess, know too that I warmly welcome feedback of all kinds, constructive or otherwise. So my goal for all of this is to have maximum reach and maximum impact and be able to help as many people as possible. So I do take your feedback seriously, and I do take it to heart. And thank you for those of you that have said, hey, this is not working for me. Like, what else can we do? So I think it's important as a community that I think we all kind of share the same goal, to be open and receptive to feedback. So even though this is my YouTube channel, I don't view it that way. I really view that as more of like what's going to help the most people. So just know that. No hard feelings, warmly welcome feedback and constructive criticism. So with that said, so yes, Kristen is going to be new to the team. So yay, welcome, Kristen. I just am so incredibly thrilled about this. Like I could cry. There's a couple other people that I just wanted to give a special thank you to that have been kind of, above and beyond helpful lately. But really everybody is above and beyond helpful, really. I mean, the way that you guys support each other in the support groups and on the chat and in the comments and all of it makes my heart smile. So just know that. But we have another gal that's been helping me out. She's been volunteering her time to help get me organized, which is no small feat, let me tell you. Her name is Laura, And so just a special thank you to Laura for everything. We've been meeting every Wednesday for about an hour or so. She's friends with Ryan. Ryan was the one that recommended Laura. So thank you, Ryan, for recommending Laura, because she's one of my new favorite people. Like I love her. I so enjoy my time that I spend with her every single week. And she's done a tremendous amount with helping me clarify my thoughts and the direction with all of this and kind of what's next. So thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Laura. And another big thank you to Paul. Paul, I had made a video a few months ago on kind of like meditation, guided affirmation for complex PTSD. And the feedback that I got on that was that it needed work. that the volume was off, the music was too loud, the vocals were too soft, and so on. And so Paul knows what he's doing, and he re-recorded it, he mixed it, he re-edited it, and he just sent it to me the other day. So I'm gonna be in. So thank you, Paul, for volunteering your time. He did, I think, an amazing job. I love what he did with the vocals. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I didn't even know that you could do that. So the way that he blended it and all of it just sounds phenomenal. So I'll be posting that or reposting that video, re-uploading that video here in the near future. So again, thank you to Paul. And of course, as always, thank you to all of the moderators that are in the support groups. There's quite a few of them. I think we're up to, between the two support groups, I probably have around 10 people that volunteer their time, and they are in there all the time. And they are just phenomenal. Like, their compassion and caring for other members and for the group is just heartwarming. Like it's so awesome to see that, and their time is so, it's just awesome, and it's much appreciated. So, and then of course, last person, Dawn, who volunteers to run the Facebook page, and she also does a phenomenal job. I just looked the other day, because I'm not on there every day, even though I'd like to be. I do still work a full-time job. So we just hit, I think we're right around 36,000 likes on the Facebook page, which is amazing. So, and if you want to find me or us, this community, on different social media, you can check in the About tab on my YouTube page, and it has all the info. I think it also should have it down below in the description after this video is done being live streamed. So you can check us out, check me out over there and everything. So trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, and then the new book for this week, I have not been able to post it or anything having to do with anything on my website, because my website's been a hot mess, is the new book for September for the book club is called Divorce Poison. It was recommended by Nan. She's one of the admins in the Facebook support group. It's a phenomenal book. It's Divorce Poison. It's by Dr. Richard Warshak. And there's a link below down in the description. You can get it on Amazon or probably at your local library. And it is an affiliate link, just so you know. So any money raised through here right now goes to offset my costs for things. So just for the sake of transparency, so you know that. And the book is phenomenal. I'm about 30% or so through it, and it talks a lot about parental alienation, which he basically which stems from what he calls divorce poison. But he has a lot of different strategies with dealing with it and with preventing it and trying to recover from it. So it's a really great book, especially if you have children involved. Frankly, I think, again, it's one of those books that I think any parent, married or otherwise, should read if they have a child, because this kind of stuff can happen at any time. This person doesn't have to be a narcissist or an emotional manipulator to an extreme degree, they can just be really angry and bitter and jaded. And that can cause parental alienation. So it's again, like just a great book full of a lot of really great pointers on how to handle this kind of thing. So just know that. Okay, so with that all said, I'm going to see who else is on here and then get to answering some questions. And let's see, lots of people, lots of new faces. Brenda, Zola, Sherry, David. Hey, David. Courtney, Beryl, Shakira. Hi, Shakira. I'm totally lost because I know these names from the community, and it's so funny to see people, not funny, but like entertaining to see people on like different platforms, because I'm so used to seeing like their face on Facebook or like their, you know, I don't know, like their avatar in the other group, and then we're here. It's just weird. Okay. Natalie says, sure. She says, I have a question. I feel like I need another person's opinion. Okay. Go for it. Oh, while you're asking that question, and I'm going to keep scrolling down, okay, Doug was saying the stream is working for him. Bosie is here. Beryl says, don't shorten the live streams. I almost have them memorized. They are still my lifeline. So here's the cool thing too. What we're going to be doing is, so for the people, and I should have clarified this, the people that do like the longer live streams, that are using them to fall asleep to at night, or that are listening to them while they're driving or what have you, we're still going to leave up the full, 3-hour or whatever live stream. So that'll still be there for those people that do want that. But for the people that do want the shorter video, but I ramble. So when I say shorter video, like that's in air quotes, okay? That's theoretically speaking, it's a shorter video. It's shorter than 3 hours, but it's probably not going to be short. So it'll probably still be like a 10-minute or so video, because I do like to give lengthy answers to try to cover as many points within that question as possible. So the long streams will still be here. So Nan is here. Hi, Nan. And let's see, who else is here? Salon, Dwight. Okay, Natalie's question is, my husband keeps kicking me out of the house when I won't do anything with him, or when he just gets mad. And my kids are in the house and it hurts. Well, boy, yeah, that's tough. If he's kicking you out of the house, I guess it depends on how open he is to talking about things, but I would try pulling him aside when the kids are not around and say, you know what, here's kind of the ground rules for fighting. Like, let's lay some ground rules, because that's got to be pretty traumatic for the kids as well, to have you being continually thrown out of the house. So, like, for example, I know a lot of people out there will say, you know what, you can get upset, you can do whatever you want to do, but don't throw getting a divorce at me. Like, don't use that as leverage or as manipulation. If you're gonna threaten me with divorce, you better mean it, because I'm gonna give you 2 shots with that. So the first one's a warning shot. The second time you say that that's what you want to do, then that's what we're gonna do, because I'm not gonna walk on eggshells, and I'm not gonna have you manipulate me by throwing that word around. So I think every couple tends to have some sort of ground rules for which to fight and how to fight fair. So, okay, we're not going to throw out getting a divorce unless that's something that's really on the table. And so you better really mean that when you say that, because that's a big word to be thrown around. Or, okay, we can fight, but we're not going to call names. Or we can fight, but these certain topics are off the table. Like this is hitting below the belt to talk about these certain topics or to call names. And if so, I would try to set that boundary and say, okay, if you're upset, you know, for whatever reason, let's talk about this. Let's work on this another way instead of you continually throwing me out of the house because this is not working for me. And then trying to kind of negotiate from there. If that's not getting you anywhere, then you're going to have to kind of take it up to the next level and figure out, okay, what are you going to do? Because you don't have the power to change him. All any of us can do is to try to set boundaries, is to try to have that open, honest, sincere communication with another person and say, this is what's working for me. This is not. Like, let's work together as a team towards a solution. If your concerns are falling on deaf ears, then at that point you're going to have to kind of revisit, okay, at what point does this become deal breaker behavior for me? At what point do I try to do something different, or kind of go from there? And only you can answer that question, because this is, it's not an easy thing. And of course, this is only like a snapshot of kind of one piece of, what's going on within that whole marriage. So, but that's where I would start, is I would try to lay some ground rules and negotiate the ground rules and see if he's responsive to that. And if he's not, then kind of figuring out, okay, what do we need to do? What do I need to do to go from here if he's not respecting my boundaries? So Doug says, Dana, if you chop up the videos every week, I will get spammed every video you post. And that might be a problem because I don't want to miss videos of people who need my help. How would they be spamming you? Are people messaging you from the chat? I guess I'm not 100% sure how that all goes. So you have to fill me in. We'll have to figure something out. So, okay, T. Bellevue is here. Postmodern Cyberpunk is here. Let's see. And Ryan sends a smiley face. Yes. Okay. Natalie is saying, I've never done a live chat before. Is this for questions? I feel like I'm at my breaking point. I can't take it anymore and I have nowhere to turn. So yes, this is a live stream, and it is for questions, and totally valid question and feeling to feel like you're at your breaking point. If you haven't already joined the support group, I would strongly encourage you to do so. The main reason being this live stream, I think is it's a great way for people to ask questions, and they get feedback, not only from me, but from everybody else here that's on the live stream. That can be incredibly valuable. But the support group goes 24/7, and people are participating in that 24/7. So there's a lot more feedback, a lot more chance for, interaction and support that's ongoing, especially if you're feeling that you're at your breaking point. So if somebody can, I don't know if they can post links in the chat. All of my info is in my About page on YouTube. I have a Facebook support group, and hopefully Nan or Ryan can kind of walk you through. They're both moderators there, can kind of walk you through joining that, what all is involved in that, and see if they can get you in there and kind of, make sure if you have any questions about that. So let's see, scrolling down. Stacy's here. Nora's here. Let's see. Hi. Hello. Okay. DM is here. Kevin says, was the book for August good? Yeah, the book for August was, and I will be posting my notes on it soon. I can't access my flippin' forum. It's, oh, Serenity now, Serenity now. For some reason, I'm locked out, and I've been working with different developers like a lot today to try to get back in and get all that. So I have my notes for that book. That'll be up as soon as I can get back into my website. The book for August was The Body Keeps Score, and I forget the author's name. He's Dutch. Like oh, hopefully somebody will post it. It's a very Dutch sounding name. And it was great. He talked a lot about, how the body keeps score. So how different traumas, and he runs a trauma center, which I thought was really helpful and very interesting, about how we process trauma, how that residual memories of that stays within our bodies, and kind of the lasting effect and lasting impact of that. And just very, very interesting. I thought it was a really great accidental, actually, follow-up to the book on the Pete Walker book, the Complex PTSD book. So that one was more about kind of like the personality styles that contribute to trauma, and also the personality styles that tend to develop out of trauma. And then the book, The Body Keeps Score, talks more about the Complex PTSD book was more about the psychology. The Body Keeps Score book was more about the physiology, which I just found it fascinating, kind of understanding more about how the brain works in all of this. So I really enjoyed it. Yes. Yeah, okay, Kevin says, yeah, I felt like it was a good companion to that book as well. So, okay, Natalie is talking about her husband. She says, he constantly tells me that if I leave, he won't help me with the kids as far as finances go. I don't have a job and I'm trying to get one. I would say, well, if he has a job, then, child support, that will be court ordered, and that is generally taken directly out of his paycheck. So he doesn't have a whole lot of a say in that. And, I don't know what his financial situation is, but it sounds like you're trying to develop a plan. And sometimes this is kind of what it is, right? So it's sort of like, okay, we can't leave right away. We have to kind of develop a plan. I would also contact your community for resources. So you can contact maybe a local domestic violence shelter, see, I would say, explain kind of what's going on, that he's, because that what you're describing is threatening to be financially abusive, and, he's being verbally abusive. There's other different types of stuff that's going on there. If they could help you with resources, with possibly contacting or giving you a referral to an attorney or things like that. So that's what I would do. Kind of see what resources are available, figure out a plan. If you could stay, I don't know kind of what your support system is around you, but if you could stay with friends or family for a little bit, if you're planning on leaving, then that might be an option. Of course, when it comes to options, not all of them are ideal, but I think if you can start kind of making a list and just start listing out the different options, you're going to realize, okay, I do have some options, some of which are more ideal than others, but here's kind of what I could possibly do. And so then kind of going from there. Okay, could I stay with friends with my children for a week or 2 weeks? Or could I stay with family? And if so, how long? Or could I stay at a shelter, domestic violence shelter? If so, for how long? Or maybe you could stay somewhere where, and then the kids could stay somewhere else. Do the kids have friends that they could stay with for a month, where, as you're trying to get back on your feet? Or kind of, what are all of the options available to you, and then going back through saying, okay, that's not an option, or this might be an option, or kind of just working through, kind of getting that clarity as far as like what you could do. And again, this is that ongoing support for this is really great in the different support groups, especially the support groups. There's in my support group, there's lots of people that are going through something very similar to what you're going through. It's not uncommon for, a spouse who is an emotional manipulator, or who's controlling, who doesn't want the marriage to end. They just, they just want everything done their way. And so if the other person does want to leave, then they do threaten to not pay bills. They threaten to, they threaten they're going to go for full custody. They're going to do all of these things. And those threats tend to keep the other spouse stuck. And that's what they're designed to do. Those threats are designed to keep the other person inside the relationship. So, it can be very difficult to get out from underneath that, but it is possible, and lots of people are going through this. You are not alone in this, and it'd be great if you do join a support group, to mention that this is what's going on with you, and to let them know, like, I really need some ideas. I need some help with problem solving and troubleshooting this, and see what other people that have been there, done that, what kind of input they can give to you, because you will be surprised in the support groups, especially the online support groups. I mean, there's generally thousands of people in there. So you're going to most likely get a lot of responses from people that have been there, done that. So Kevin says, I'm talking about mantras. He says, I don't know how helpful mantras are for getting rid of tension. I think they can be really helpful. So, because it's really changing a lot of your mindset. Because tension kind of, at least for me, I think probably for a lot of people, it tends to be that stored up energy, and it can be this ongoing kind of feeling. So, here's an example. So lately for me, because I've been having all of these issues with my website, right? And it's incredibly stressful. It keeps me awake at night. It's exhausting. It's incredibly time consuming. And it's every unpleasant emotion that I could experience regarding this, I feel like I experience. And because I know that there's people that need these support groups, they need this website, they need this information, and that's kind of like a lot of people's lifelines. And so for me, it's like this pressure of like, okay, I need to get this figured out. I need to get this resolved, because there's a lot at stake here. And so trying to kind of take a step back from that, because that level of panic within me isn't going to solve anything. And I know that, and I've been trying, and I've had like incredible amounts of tension, because I get so angry that it's not getting resolved, and it continues to go on and on and on. And trying to reframe it and tell myself, okay, this is part of the learning curve, and trying to embrace the journey and be like, Dana, okay, this is really frustrating, but there's a lot of lessons that can be learned in this. And telling myself, I'm really embracing the learning curve with this. So even something as simple as that, it's amazing the difference I feel when I reframe how I'm thinking about something. And So obviously that's on a very, it's a small scale. But on like a larger scale, so with tension from whatever, from finances or recovering from narcissistic abuse or starting a new job or what have you, to play around with taking on the opposite mindset. So if you're finding yourself, totally overwhelmed with something, to just say, if you're finding yourself overwhelmed with the learning curve, I'm just going to use my example again, the learning curve to something, trying to embrace the mindset of, man, I live for the climb. Like I live for this. Like I'm figuring out so much. This is so empowering. Or so if you're, starting a new job, being like, okay, I'm really overwhelmed and tense about, starting a new job, to try, to just play around with the opposite mindset, which would be, I really enjoy looking forward to meeting new people or having new experiences or learning new things, and trying to kind of reframe it to yourself and see kind of where that new mindset takes you. And you might even decide, you're like, you know what? Okay, I don't like that mindset, but maybe I like this other one. Or maybe I don't want to play around with mindsets. Maybe I want to keep my old mindset of, I hate starting a new job, or what have you. That's fine too. But there's a lot of freedom, I think, in kind of exploring different ways of thinking and feeling about a topic. And it's amazing because our feelings really do follow our thoughts. So if we change our perspective of something, we tend to change, it's like a ripple effect. Then it changes everything. We have that residual ripple effect where it changes our feelings about it too. So that might just be something to kind of play around with. It really does work wonders for me. I have to also remind myself to remember sometimes kind of this new mindset or the new mantra that I'm trying to embrace. And I think probably a lot of people are like that. So, maybe trying to put it on a Post-it note on your laptop, or put it in your wallet, or something where you can kind of remind yourself of like, oh yeah, this is the mindset that I'm going to play around with for the next day or week or from here on out, and see how that works for you. And let me say something too. It might feel like you're being a fraud because I felt like that too. So when I had the mindset of, man, I really enjoy the climb. At first I was like, no, I don't. I don't enjoy this at all, because it's just been so frustrating. But the reality is, what I do enjoy in that climb and the riding the learning curve is, hindsight being what it is, right? It's all of the lessons learned that oftentimes we have to go through the pain in order to learn that lesson. So, I guess just trying to embrace the most empowering mindset possible is a good way to, can be a good way to go about it. Oh, Salon says, Dana, I was wondering about that fox picture you have in the background. Is it holding a dead animal in its mouth? Are those a bunch of grapes? It sort of reminds me of the predator-prey dynamic. So where did it go? It is, it's of course thumbtacked to my wall, so I cannot easily get it for you. But yes, he's holding a cluster of grapes in his mouth. And okay, so yeah, you can see it in this video. That drawing, move this out of the way. That drawing came from a member of the community, and she drew it because I have this obsession with the Aesop's fable Fox and Grapes, and that's has to do with the concept or the term cognitive dissonance. And so this comes from, and do I have the other one? What did I do with it? Oh, I might have moved it back into my kitchen. But the original picture of the Aesop's fable with fox and grapes is the fox is trying to get the grapes and can't get them. And so he tells himself, oh, well, you know what? I didn't want those grapes anyhow. I bet they're sour. And actually, that's where the term sour grapes comes from, is from a little bit of trivia there, from that Aesop's fable. So I liked this one with the fox actually getting the grapes, because to me it represents being in reality, seeing things clearly, and having clarity on what you want and then going after and getting it. So because cognitive dissonance is, of course, it's that mental distress that we feel when we have two competing thoughts or conflicting thoughts about the same topic at the same time. And so in that example, the fox was saying, oh, I really want the grapes. But then after he couldn't get them, he told himself, oh, I really don't want those grapes. I bet they're sour anyhow. Because that's how he justified not getting the grapes, was telling himself, oh, I bet they're sour anyhow. Cognitive dissonance is something that we all experience probably on a fairly regular basis. And it's especially prominent in an abusive relationship of any kind. So here's an example. So if a person has the thought of, I want to date this person, right? I really want to date Bob, because Bob seems like a really great guy. He'd make a really great partner. Then you find out some information about Bob or Sally or whoever, and you realize, okay, this is not who I thought that they were. So now you have two conflicting thoughts about this person. They're either a really great person that would make a really great partner, or they've got some problematic behavior and they really wouldn't make that great of a partner. What all people do is we need our thoughts and our actions to line up. So if our action is going to be to stay in that relationship with Bob or Sally, then we need to pick the thought that's going to match that action. Generally, how this is done, so especially if we've experienced some sort of problematic behavior, is then we justify what we've seen. So for example, if we saw that Bob or Sally, if we saw them on a dating site, right, and we've been with them for a year, if our action is going to be to stay with them, we're going to have to somehow justify that information, that thought of, this person is not who I thought they were, or this person's cheating on me. So we might justify it by telling ourselves, we must have seen that wrong. Maybe it was just somebody that looked like them. Or, well, maybe it was an old profile. Or maybe my friend that told me that she saw them on a dating site, maybe my friend was just really jealous, or maybe she saw wrong. So we're gonna do whatever, and our brain is doing this like fast until we can find something to hang on to that we're like, okay, that's a good enough justification for me. So now that mental distress is resolved, because now our thought matches our action and we can move forward in a direction that makes sense to us. Because if we're having thoughts that go one way and our actions go another way, we have that distress because we're not acting in alignment. We're acting in a way that doesn't make any sense to us. And that's what's causing us distress. So it's a super fascinating topic. And again, it's something that everybody experiences on a regular basis. But in an abusive relationship, that ongoing mental distress, it's exhausting and it's crazy making, and it really erodes a person's sanity. And it's something that our brain is, so not only do we have this emotional manipulator who's manipulating us, but in a way, like, our brain is also manipulating, because we want this certain outcome. And so our brain is trying to get our thoughts to match our actions. And of course, so much of this is subconscious that we're not even aware that that's really going on. But sort of like with anything else, once you kind of become aware of it, then you can start slowing things down and seeing reality for what it is. And it's really, really interesting to be able to slow things down and to examine your thought process as, like, when you start having these conflicting thoughts about things. So here's another example that I think probably a lot of people can relate to. So if a person, me, I'll just say me, if a person's trying to lose weight, okay, and they're telling themselves, like for me, I'm saying, okay, I need to eat healthy. I need to stop eating ice cream, because that is my Achilles heel. I love ice cream. Love ice cream. So I need to quit eating ice cream. If I'm driving home from work or I'm at the grocery store and I have that overwhelming urge to go buy ice cream, I have to somehow justify that. If I choose the action of buying ice cream, of eating ice cream, I have to justify that, because that doesn't fit with my other thought that ice cream isn't good for me. Ice cream's making me fat, right? So I have to justify that. And I might tell myself, well, you know what? Okay, instead of making dinner, I'm just going to have a bowl of ice cream. So really, it's about the same amount of calories. Or I'll have a smaller serving of ice cream. Or maybe it wasn't so reasonable after all for me to just totally cut out ice cream. After all, it's the middle of August and it's like 90 degrees. So I'm going to keep offering up these different justifications until I find one that works well enough that I can eat my ice cream and not feel distressed about it. So, and of course, the other part to cognitive dissonance is this is also, it's really the catalyst for all behavior change. So, once we experience enough pain with, if I keep gaining weight because I keep eating ice cream, and then finally I'm like, you know what, this is not working for me, like my pants are not fitting anymore, then I'm going to be more motivated to change my behavior if I experience, generally, most of us are more inspired by pain than by motivation. So at that point, then my action would shift, which would mean that my thought is also going to have to shift. So if my action is absolutely no way, I'm not eating ice cream, or I'm not going to eat ice cream for the next 30 days, if that's my thought, and if my action backs that up, then I'm in alignment and I don't have that cognitive dissonance because I've actually successfully made that behavior change. Really, really, really interesting stuff. So that's cognitive dissonance. So let's see. Let me scroll up. And okay, let's see. Okay, this is a question here. Ethan asks, I have a child with my ex-narcissist. Custody battle just ended. It was really ugly. Narcissist lost for the most part, but now he is being really nice. It really scares me though. Any thoughts? Well, I don't blame you for being nervous about that or scared. So I guess depending on the age of your child, my guess would be if this person is an emotional manipulator, that they're going to continue to manipulate, and that they're probably, I would just be really hesitant to take anything that they're doing for face value. So I would continue keeping a paper trail of everything. I'd continue to be on, just very observant of your surroundings. And, I wouldn't provoke that emotion at all. So if your ex is, I would just try to take the high ground, I guess, at all times, really at all times in life. That's really just kind of the best way to go. It just keeps keeps us out of trouble, and it just keeps life simpler. So just being polite and pleasant to your ex, and but again, like you know him best, so keeping a paper trail of things. If he normally does certain behaviors or has in the past, I would continue to anticipate that and just realize that this might be the calm before another storm. And if you start feeling like something's off, or what have you, to just go with your gut instinct, and to always err on the side of caution. And that's kind of all I think any of us can do in these situations. People are now talking about ice cream. Kevin says, I've been wanting to try making banana ice cream. Okay, so real quick, back to ice cream. Yes, that is delicious. You can do that. Like, you can freeze bananas and then put them in a blender and add like a little bit. I do a little bit of like coconut milk in there. And you can even add like cocoa powder. And it's a great way to just make vegan ice cream. It seriously tastes like chocolate ice cream. It does not even taste like bananas. It's really good. So that was just kind of an aside there. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Awake. Kate says, they're talking about co-parenting with narcissists and such. Says, I had a similar experience with my ex narcissistic husband, that he was counter-parenting, not co-parenting. And so, yes, a lot of them will do that because that's kind of the way that they're wired. So it's that mentality of, power and control. So power and control over other people, over the situation, what have you. That's the mindset of, it's this me versus you mindset that they tend to have. And that mindset it leads to counter parenting, because everything that they're trying to do is trying to get and keep power and control over other people, over the situation, versus, a quote unquote like normal person mindset, which is that of cooperation. So it's not me versus you, it's me and you. It's teamwork. It's let's work towards a solution. I think the sooner a person realizes that if you're dealing with an emotional manipulator, that's the mindset that you're dealing with, is me versus you all the time. And the sooner that you realize that, I think the better off a person really is, because then they're not caught off guard anymore. It's sort of like, oh, okay, this is their mindset. This is kind of how they're wired, how they see the world. And of course, I think it helps too, because then it's not like you're taking it personally, because this is just kind of how they're wired. So they have this me versus you mindset, and for us to anticipate that and just realize this is their mindset. So I'm going to do the very best I can do to co-parent with somebody, but I'm also going to realize that this other person is viewing me as the enemy, because that's the result of that mindset of me versus you. So to not be upset, or and of course you're going to be, but to not be surprised, maybe is a better way to describe that, of when they do that counter parenting. Because it's sort of like, yeah, okay, I anticipate this, because they have the mindset of me versus you. They have that counter mindset. And that's going to be pervasive throughout their life and throughout everything that they do, because that's their mindset. So trying to just work with that as much as you possibly can, to where you're not caught off guard by it, and for you to be able to keep kind of your sanity about everything. So for example, if you've got an ex and he or she has that kind of counter parenting thing, and you're encountering the same types of counter parenting every single visit. So let's say, for example, if the agreement is that your child is supposed to be home by 8 o'clock, and that you have a bedtime routine with your child, right? So you have agreed with your ex that they're going to come home with their homework done and with them being fed, right? So your evening routine is now, okay, they're going to get there, you're going to hang out for a little bit. Maybe you guys have a favorite show or something that you watch together. Then they're going to brush their teeth, and then you're going to read a bedtime story, and then that's kind of the evening routine, or what have you, right? But your ex consistently drops them off at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. They haven't had dinner yet, or they haven't done homework yet, and maybe yeah. So let's just go with that. So then now you're left to try to do homework and dinner, and it's like way past their bedtime, and it's throwing the routine off, and then now it's difficult to get them up in the morning, and no matter what you say, your ex doesn't seem to care. Like, they're just going to bring him back whenever they want to bring him back. And this puts you in the role, that's kind of good cop, bad cop kind of a thing, right? A good parent, bad parent. So now you're the bad guy because you're the one that's like, okay, no, you've got homework and you've got to brush your teeth and you've got to get to bed and do all these things. And here they just went out and they had this amazing time with your ex where they went to a movie and they just went out and had fun. So if you can anticipate that and realize, okay, this is kind of what the pattern has been, so we're going to try to quit anticipating things are going to be different, because it's probably not, because they have that whole me versus you mentality, even though they might not be aware of it, right? I don't think it does require a certain degree of self-awareness to think about what kind of mindset we have in different situations. So they might not even really be aware that they're being this difficult or that they're sabotaging things. It's just, that's what they're doing. Okay. So instead of saying, okay, little Johnny is going to go out with, your ex at, 4 o'clock from 4 to 8, then let's make it, 4:30, or let's make it 5 o'clock to 8 or 8:30 or kind of whatever, to kind of flex that. But then you make sure that they get the homework done and that they have a snack or at least something before they're out the door. So that way, if your ex drops them off, you're like, okay, well, at least we've already got homework done. That way there's no fighting, there's no tears, there's no trying to explain to the teacher what's going on. There's none of that. And of course it depends on the child's age and whatnot. So it's difficult when you have that counter-parenting, especially if they're counter-parenting in a way that's making them look like the fun, good parent, and that's making you look like the evil tyrant. Because, depending on the age of the child, that can really pit them against the other parent. And that's, that can be very problematic. So Hippie Go Lucky is here. Hey, Cecilia's here. And let's see. Awesome. Hippie Go Lucky says, I'm meeting a lot of new people lately. A new dog park opened a few weeks ago, and I've been going there almost daily. There's a Facebook group for the park too, and people are so nice. I like it a lot. I love that. Yay, you and your dog. That's awesome. What a great, healthy thing that the two of you can go do. And yeah, there's so many, I think especially with pets, like pets and kids, people tend to really, they're really involved. So like kids meetups or, dog park meetups, that's very much like-minded kind of people. So I'm glad that you're getting out and that you're doing that and that you're doing something that's healthy and it's exercise and sunshine and lots of stuff for you. So yay you for that. I love that. Sherry says, competition is what my soon-to-be ex does with my daughter. It's exactly. It's good cop, bad cop. Yes. So there's a book that we're reading for the book club for September. It's called Divorce Poison. There's a link down below about it. I'm sure you can get it Amazon, probably even your local library. And it talks a lot about that. And it talks about the dangers of what's called parental alienation syndrome, I guess. And it's where you've got one parent who generally is an emotional manipulator of some sort, but who ends up either intentionally or possibly even unintentionally, if they're just really hurt and angry and bitter and they're using the child as a pawn to hurt the other parent. Either way you look at it, it's not healthy behavior. But it's where one parent actually kind of poisons the mind of the child against the other parent. And the book goes into it. It's really great, kind of in a nutshell. And I'm not finished with it yet, but he really talks about the importance of maintaining contact with your child and talking to them about what's going on. So if you start noticing behavior changes in your child to where they're kind of withdrawing or they're becoming really rude and hateful and disobedient, and maybe which might be perceived as like being really bratty or just really difficult, to start talking to them. And I think it's a good idea to talk to them before any of that starts, and to let them know, okay, kiddo, here's the deal. I'm so sorry that you're having to go through this with this divorce, and I just want you to know that we both love you very much. And divorce it's really tough, and I'm so sorry. My goal is I don't want to ever put you in the middle of anything, and I don't want you to ever feel that you have to take sides, because I will love you no matter what, because I am your mom or I am your dad. And I just want you to know that, because if you're kind of anticipating that, like if your ex is manipulative and is saying things, like if you're hearing from your child that they might be saying things, or you're thinking that this is a possibility that your ex might start kind of getting them to align with them, to make you the bad guy, to say things like, sometimes when people go through divorce, they can say really mean or hurtful things about the other parent. And I just want you to know, I'm not going to say anything mean or nasty about your father or, whoever your ex is, that because it's still your dad. And, because in a kid's mind, their parent, they are half of that parent. So an attack on the other parent is for a child, it's perceived as an attack on them. And so it's really important that we realize this, and we are very aware of kind of what we say about our ex, and making sure that children don't overhear things, that they don't feel like they're put in the middle, and to really try to foster that open communication with them as much as possible. And in the book, he talks about this, and I totally agree. So trying to keep, positive interaction, ideally where time, not only just positive interaction, but quality time, to where you're allowing time and space in the relationship with your child, to where if they do want to talk about something, that they feel comfortable talking to you. So, for example, making a point to go for a walk with them every, couple nights a week, or having dinner at the dinner table together. And again, like kind of fostering communication. So no cell phones, no TV, which might make you the bad guy, but and say like, hey, I really am interested in what's going on with you, and like, let's talk about our day and kind of whatever. Making time to, if you can afford to, like to take them out for dinner or for a soda or what have you, where it's just one-on-one time, where you guys are you're kind of allowing that conversation to happen. Because a lot of kids at any age, they'll look to adults as far as, how do I handle this? How do I feel about this? Because as adults, we lack the vocabulary oftentimes to describe how we're feeling and how we're feeling as we're going through any type of event. Kids really do. And so it can be that much more tricky to kind of get them to open up because they might not have the vocabulary with which to open up with. So kind of trying to, I think, go about it where we're role modeling that behavior of, this is frustrating, or this made me angry, or this made me happy. And you're talking about emotions and you're saying, okay, this is invalidating them. So if they're saying things like, dad or mom said this about you, they said that you're a bad parent, or that you treat me like a baby, or that, kind of whatever, to address that. And instead of getting mad about it, to say, okay, well, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Or how did that make you feel when mom or when dad said that? And now, do you think that's true? And to try to take a mindset of curiosity about what's going on with them, instead of feeling defensive or critical of your ex. Because my guess would be is, if your ex is talking to your child about things that are not appropriate, because it's a divorce between two adults, right? Even though the child is in the middle of the divorce, this is adult conversation about hurt feelings and all of these things. And they need to ideally keep that adult conversation between adults and not drag children into it, because then children feel the need to get defensive and they want to defend the parent who is feeling wounded, and it creates all kinds of triangulation and inappropriate dynamics and all of this. So just trying to keep that communication open, keeping that relationship going, making sure to have quality time with your child, and letting them kind of know why you're doing things. Hey, well, we've got to do homework now because, I want you to pass. Like, I want you to pass this grade. And, or we've got to have a bedtime. Like, there's a bedtime at my house. I know there's not a bedtime at mom's house, but there's a bedtime here, because it really throws off your sleep schedule otherwise. And then you're really grumpy. And, or just kind of explaining like your rationale about why you're doing what you're doing. So that's lots of big topic, parental alienation. Yeah, Daniela says, ironically, a bad vocabulary, I think, is when you accuse somebody as bad instead of learning to deal with responsibilities, something, of course, a narc would never do. Yes, and so talking about what you're, for sure not labeling your ex as bad. So talking about, you don't even need to necessarily talk about their behavior, but definitely not talking about it in terms of like bad behavior. Because again, the child's going to most likely take that as an insult to them. So to just validate kind of how they're feeling about things. Like, is this, does it make you feel angry? Does it make you feel hurt? Does it make you feel sad? And these are all very, very valid things in that we, or if they say, mom said this or dad said this, and, they said that, I mean, there's no shortage of awful things I've heard other parents say, but, they said that you're the reason we don't have money because they have to pay you, they have to pay child support because you're greedy. So they were saying that. And is that true? Are you greedy? To talk to them about that and to say, okay, this is between, you know, my ex or my father or your father and me, or your mother and me, and I'm really sorry that he or she brought this up to you. This is stuff that you don't need to worry about. This is adult stuff. And we're going to be just fine, and nobody's being greedy, and you know, this is not your fault. This is totally not your problem, and we're going to handle it. And letting them kind of know, you know, they shouldn't have dragged you into this. They said a lot of things cuz, you know, I wish they wouldn't have said to you, because that's a lot for little shoulders to bear. So just letting the child know, it's, you know, because we don't have control over our ex and what they say or what they don't say. All we have control over is our actions and reactions to things. Yes, totally. Lisa says, I think puts the kid in the middle, pushing him towards people pleasing. So they side with the mom when they are with her, and then side with the dad when they are with him, just for acceptance, which makes total sense. And a lot of kids do that because that's kind of the parent that they're with. And so it's awkward to rock. I mean, I can relate to this growing up with divorced parents. It's really awkward to have to pick sides. And thankfully, there wasn't a whole lot of that. My mom especially, I think, really did a really great job. She never spoke poorly of my dad. And, you know, she just validated me. If I had hurt feelings about something, it was, you know, she'd never, you know, talk bad about him. It was always, you know, I'm really sorry that this is what's going on and that's not fair. And I wish that I could make it better, but I can't. And, you know, just kind of letting kids know, like, if you need to talk, I'm here for you, and I'm not going to judge, and you don't need to choose sides. And I love you. I love you no matter what. I'm just letting them know that your house is a safe space, and that they can vent to you about your ex, and that you're not going to go on the attack, that you're just going to be validating, and that you're going to try to stay as neutral as possible. Now, granted, after they leave with friends, or they go to bed, you might need to go call your best friend and scream and cry and talk a bunch of trash about your ex. But, you know, obviously to try to not do that in front of your child. So. So, okay, lots of comments here. Hold on just a second. Yeah, Danielle is saying, a friend of mine is going through that right now. His ex-wife manipulates their daughter a lot that way, presenting my friend as the mean guy and her as the victim instead of keeping the child off the drama. And a lot of people do that, and it's so frustrating, because how they don't see or don't care that they're hurting a child is just absolutely beyond me. I mean, it's like that blinding degree of selfishness is just I don't get it. I just don't get it. But it's very common for a lot of people. So, let's see. Ethan says, the ex-narcissist has been divorced and married and now has 3 biological children and 3 stepchildren. He tried to take my son. What happened? Well, a lot of it's that me versus you mentality. It's that mindset of winning, right? It's a mindset of competition. And they might not even like the child. They might have been critiquing your parenting the whole time you were married. They might, in your mind, you might have even thought, this is ridiculous. Like, they didn't even seem bonded to this child. They were never home. They never had a lot of quality time. And now all of a sudden they're trying to get full custody. I don't get it. And it's when you're dealing with an emotional manipulator like that, who has that mindset of winning, of competition, then they're trying to win. And it's not even about, half the time, it's not even about that they like the child or that they're bonded to the child. It's just more so to win and to hurt the other person. It's really, really twisted, hurtful, sick behavior. Yes, I agree. Beryl says, talking about kind of what kids need to know, and she says, yes, you can tell adult children, but I still advise to know why you are telling them. If it's to help protect them, then that's a solid reason. Yes, and I think that's a great kind of checks and balances there. If we're telling anybody something about another person that can be potentially damaging, to really be clear, why are we going to say what we're going to say? Is it to try to settle the score or get revenge against our ex? Is it out of frustration? Why are we saying this? Or is it really because we feel that our child needs to know this to protect their safety and their sanity? So, obviously, if you've got a parent, if your ex is abusive in any way, and if your child is saying, yeah, this is what's going on, my other parent is abusive, you don't have to talk bad about your ex, but you can definitely validate that. So continue to talk good about your ex. That would be kind of crazy making if the child is like, you know what, I don't want anything to do with them, or they're abusive, or they said all these hurtful things. If the child is in danger, either safety or sanity wise, then it's good to be like, hey, you know what, this is not okay behavior. It's not okay for you to be treated like this. So we're gonna do what we can to keep you safe and sane in the situation, and to validate that and to take that seriously. And to not minimize it and be like, whoa, but your mom has a lot of really great qualities. Like, you don't need to talk up the other parent, especially if they're being abusive. It's just sort of like, okay, let's, we don't have control over them, we have control over us, and we're gonna see what we can do to keep you and to keep us safe and sane. Because that's information that child would need to know. Yes, I love that. Don't talk about the ex, talk about the behaviors. So, yeah, Stacy was saying, yes, my parents still don't get it. I can't talk bad about them at all, or they walk away or fight. And most people do. So if most people, even like healthy, well-adjusted people, if they feel like they're being attacked, it's a very natural, normal human thing for us to also go on the attack. And most people are not open to constructive criticism or criticism of any kind about their behavior. A lot of parents are not. It's hard to hear. And of course, too, their perception of events is very different than our perception of events, which is also very different from our siblings' perspective of perception of events. And that's kind of one of the crazy making elements at work and families is everybody generally perceives things very differently, especially if there's abuse going on. Because it's not uncommon when you have, if you're growing up in an abusive home, if you have one child that's the scapegoat, you have one child that's the golden child, then you might even have some other children that are just flat out ignored or treated normally. I have a friend who grew up in that home. She was the scapegoat. She was horribly abused physically and financially and emotionally and verbally and psychologically. Her sister was the golden child. Her other sister didn't experience either extreme. She grew up in a fairly normal environment, but her mother saved her wrath for her and just really lashed out. So, kind of fast forward, 35, 40 years, her sisters, they all have very different perceptions of their childhood because they, especially with an emotional manipulator, they experienced very different sides of this person. So very, very strange. Elise, that's an interesting point. She says, my mother is 89 now. I have been thinking of letting her know she's been abusive to me. I want to make peace, but I'm not sure that would be kind to do to her. I never talked about abuse with her. Well, my guess is that she, on some level, knows that she's been abusive to you, even though she might be in denial about it. And so she most likely knows. As far as making peace, I think it does. I don't know if age changes any of this. It's so hard because you're probably not going to get the clarity or the closure that you're seeking. And so I think the peace that you're going to have to come to, that you're going to have to find, is going to have to be kind of without her acknowledgement of that. So maybe getting clear on what does making peace with her or with your childhood or the situation look like to you? Is this a conversation that you want to have? And if so, how in depth does it need to go? So maybe I'm just throwing ideas out, but if you were to think to yourself, okay, yeah, I really feel like I do need to address this to some extent, but at the same time I want to kind of, because you're saying two very different things. I want to bring up the discussion about her being abusive, but I also want to make peace, and so those two ideas are very conflicting. So how do you find the middle ground with that? So maybe something like having a conversation with her and saying, Mom, kind of with the understanding that you have today as an adult, realizing, realizing that your mother, she was abusive, and that I think most people tend to do the best they can given the understanding and the coping and the self-awareness and the insight that they have at the time. And so abusive people tend to not have a lot of self-awareness. They tend to not have a lot of coping skills. They tend to have a lot of unresolved stuff from their past. It does not make their behavior okay or justifiable at all, just so we're clear. But at the same time, kind of realizing that, like, this is a normal person, what your mother was able to give to you was like a normal person's 10%. And so a normal person might have been, that's their 10%, but for her, that might have been her 100%, because of whatever reason, because of mental illness, because of addiction or drugs or alcoholism or her own childhood or stuff. But I really do believe that we all do the best we can with what we know. And, just realizing she's a very limited person, and it's the kind of the whole, like, hurt people. Like, happy, healthy, well-adjusted people don't act like that. And I guess to realize, okay, this is, even though this happened to you, this is not because of you. There was nothing that you did to make her behave this way. This, even though it feels really personal because she abused you, that her abuse it's not personal. It's who she is. It's how she's wired. It's how how she knew to interact with you at that time. And she was way off base. And it's incredibly sad because obviously she missed out on probably a lot of things because of that, because of how her limitations, because her 100% was a normal person's 10. And that's tragic. It's tragic for her, and it's tragic for you. And so maybe kind of realizing, okay, I just need to make peace with the fact that my mom is a really limited person. And, you know, her 100% was a normal person's 10%. And that's what I'm going to have to make peace with. And I'm going to have to move forward and drive on. And she may or may not have any, recollection of the abuse, especially if she's 89. Or she might totally remember it and feel totally justified in it. So that's going to be a tough conversation to have. I'll be curious to see how you end up approaching that, and what kind of what you do with that, and what kind of resolution you're able to come to. So, good luck with that. My friend that I was just talking about, she is in, oh gosh, I don't want to get her age wrong in case she's watching. I want to say like she's in her 50s, and her mother is terminally ill right now, and is just been an absolute handful. And she's still incredibly abusive. She's not physically abusive, but she's incredibly verbally and emotionally abusive to her still. And there's been a lot of pressure from her family for her to take her mother in and to care for her. Even though her siblings, I mean, they're all like in their 50s and 60s now, even though they all know, okay, mom was really abusive to her. But they tell her, you know what, that was a long time ago, that's water under the bridge, because they're only looking at it in terms of physical abuse. Like, yeah, mom was abusive to you physically, really bad when we were kids, but that was then, this is now, she's terminally ill, you need to forgive and forget, she's your mom, you've got to make peace with things, blah, blah, blah. And it's been awful for my friend because there's a lot of tension there, and there's a lot of unresolved conversations. And, like I said, her mother's still incredibly verbally and emotionally abusive to her, to where she's, about 2 days. And my friend's like, I can't do this. Like, she needs to go somewhere else because she's just awful. With that said, her mom did have, she said it was really strange. Her mom had this kind of brief period awakening where it was like this glimpse of where she apologized for being so abusive when she was younger, and then that was it. And then she went back into her behavior. So, my friend said, she's like, I really thought for sure my mother is dying. She's got stage 4 cancer and it's terminal. She's only got a few months to live. I thought for sure her behavior would change. I thought for sure she would treat me with love and respect, and that we would finally be able to have this mother-daughter dynamic that I so wanted for so long. And even though her mom knows she's got less than 6 months to live, that dynamic is still not possible. And even though her mom had that one brief moment, that flicker of awareness, it's gone. And it's back to that abusive behavior. And it's hard. I think it's so hard for us to understand, again, like how is somebody so hateful and cruel to anybody, but to let alone your child, and especially if you're terminally ill and you know that the clock is ticking. Like, I don't understand that. And I think it's hard for all of us to understand that. They're just wired very differently. And, for me, it's easier to understand their behavior as this is just, they're limited, and this is where their limitations are. And to not take it personally. You just kind of, there's two chances we have at having a good family. It's the one that we're born into, and that's just dumb luck, right? And then it's the one that we create. And either we have whatever that means to a person. Maybe a family is having your own children and getting married and going that path, or maybe it's through friends or through community or through whoever you decide is going to be family, and having that good relationship with family. So I hope that helps. But yes, keep us posted on things. That's what people are saying. Sylvie says, yes, my mother is a robot. That's how I see it. She's like, it's not her fault, but there's just no hope there. And yes, people are saying, talking about words. NZA says, it's awakening when you read about word salad, gaslighting, etc. For sure. And speaking of which, really quick, before I forget, I keep meaning to bring this up and I kind of keep forgetting. So I have been working on a book. I've been actually working on quite a few books because because that's how my brain works. I'm all over the place all the time. But the first book that's going to come out, I'm really excited about it, and it's going to be a book about definitions, and it's going to be free. That's the goal. So this book is going to be, my goal for this book is to have kind of all of the terms and concepts that a person needs to know. So it's something that people can give to each other, can give to other survivors of this, can domestic violence shelters, to kind of friends and family, to whoever. And that's one of the reasons I want to make it free. So it gets out there as much as possible. And so yes, I'm really excited about it because it's going to have a lot of this terminology. This isn't mainstream terminology. It's not in the DSM. A lot of this stuff is not taught, but it needs to be, because these terms, it's hard for us to describe what we've gone through if we don't have the words to describe it. So that's the goal of this book. I'm hoping to have a very solid working rough draft done by the end of this month. And then after that, my guess is it's going to go, because what I'd like to do is I'm going to put it out to both support groups and get feedback for the different words, for the different definitions, and different examples. That was the word I was looking for. The different examples, to make sure that kind of we're all on the same page, and that I'm picking examples that are like most impactful, I guess, is the goal. So the goal of this book is like maximum reach, maximum impact. And in order for it to be maximum impact, this is again the benefit of community, is that we can throw these things out there to other people and get different perspectives on it, and people can chime in and say, you know what, I think this would be a better example of this one term, or did you think about it in terms of this way or that way, or both ways, or whatever. So I'm excited. So the book is close to being ready to be put out to the community and to get feedback from everybody. And then we're going to go from there. So yes, because those words are huge. I mean, once you have the words for this, I think everybody encounters that. You're just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, yes, gaslighting, that's exactly what it is. Hoovering, yes. Flying monkeys, yes. Okay. Like, I got it. Like, this is what's going on. So, Salon says, I have a question. My mom went through domestic violence / narcissistic abuse for 20 years. She's still codependent, highly critical, sometimes infantile. Should I point her in the direction of therapy or healing? If she's open to it. So you know, a lot of people aren't. You know, if she's open to, I don't know how tech savvy she is, but if she's on Facebook, if she's open to exploring some different support groups, you might want to, again, like if you think she's open to it, might want to recommend a support group on Facebook. Those are probably the easiest ones to kind of figure out how to navigate and all that. So there's a lot of aha moments that can come from that. But, if she's not open to it, then she's probably going to get really defensive and resentful, and it's probably not going to go well. But if you do a search on Facebook or even just the internet as a whole for narcissism or sociopathy, or psychopathy or psychopaths or narcissists or kind of whatever, you're in groups, you'll come up with a lot. There's a lot of different groups out there. My group info is on the About tab on YouTube, so you can get to it from there. My group is called Healing After Narcissistic Abuse, is the group on Facebook. If she's interested in joining, I highly recommend that a person join a few, because different groups are going to resonate with different people. And there's also like subgroups within narcissistic abuse. So if a person is the daughter of or the child of a narcissistic mother, there's support groups specifically for that. If a person is experienced physical abuse, there's specific support groups for that, or specifically for domestic violence, or specifically for there's male, or groups for men. There's just all kinds of subgroups, and so sometimes that can be helpful. There's groups for ex-husbands of narcissists or ex-wives of narcissists. And sometimes finding those specific groups, in addition to other support groups for like narcissistic abuse, it can be really helpful because it's very specific to that person's situation. Or groups on parental alienation. People that are going through that, or divorcing a narcissist or an emotional manipulator, things like that. So Sylvie says, understanding what is happening and having words to describe things is extremely helpful. Yes, it is. It really, really is. Yes, and so people are talking about the term psychopath and saying that they were really disturbed when they first started hearing kind of the definitions of psychopaths. And this is one of the reasons that I've been writing this book, is because I think there's so many misunderstandings and misconceptions and misapplications of these terms by everybody, not just by people that are going through abuse, but by everybody. By psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and domestic violence shelters and family and friends, and because everybody has their own idea of, we all have our own biases and our own constructs and our own way of understanding things, even if we've been trained in certain terminology. So if a person thinks, okay, abuse is, if they're thinking, okay, maybe abuse is only physical in their mind, or that abuse, emotional abuse or verbal abuse, only constitutes verbal or emotional abuse if it's really, really awful, if they're really just tearing a person down. But that's not true, and it's not always the case. So just kind of like the word psychopath, a lot of people kind of what they think a psychopath is versus what a psychopath, and now that term is, at least in the DSM, it's been replaced with antisocial personality disorder, which encompasses both psychopaths and sociopaths. But people think, they think psychopath, they think Charles Manson, or they think some scary person that is over the top behavior, and that they would see this person coming. And that's very infrequently the case. Same thing with sociopaths. Sociopaths tend to be incredibly charming. They tend to not come across as highly problematic people. They tend to have a lot of highly problematic behavior and a trail of, you know, exploitation and hurt and heartache behind them, but they don't tend to, come across as what most people think of when they think of a sociopath. Same thing with narcissists. People think, okay, well, a narcissist is somebody who's just really vain, who's always looking in the mirror or taking selfies. And, yeah, some of them do that, but it's not, taking a bunch of selfies isn't the problem. It's the core of that, which is power and control. So it's a person that, lacks empathy, lacks remorse, driven by power and control. So again, like kind of what people think something is and what something actually is are two very different things, which leads to all of this confusion out there. And it leads to feeling very re-victimized by a lot of people. So if we're doing all this research and we're like, oh my gosh, no, my ex is a sociopath. Like they are antisocial personality disorder. Telling other people this, because they're in their mind, they're thinking, oh no, you're just bitter and jaded. Like your ex isn't a sociopath. They are just a con artist and they just lie and they cheat and they steal and they exploit and they have no empathy or remorse and a callous indifference towards others. But they're not a sociopath. It's like, well, it's the same thing. So, it's really frustrating and re-victimizing because other people are often not comfortable using these labels to describe somebody because they have their own understanding of what these labels are. So it's hard. It's one of those things, like for us, when we get those labels, we're like, oh my gosh, that's it. And like, oftentimes there's not a lot of wondering. Like if anything, it tends to be a lot of clarity. It's like, oh my gosh, I was making myself nuts trying to figure out what on earth was going on with this person and like why I couldn't get through to them and like why we kept having these same issues over and over again. For a lot of people, most people, and this is normal, we tend to assume that other people are like us. That's a very normal human trait. And especially if the person has pretended to be like us. So if they've been doing a lot of that mirroring, if they've been telling us, okay, I really want to change, and they've been manipulating us, then it's hard to kind of tell, like, is this person, do they really have problematic behavior, or are they a normal person that, like, are they personality disordered and have problematic behavior, or are they a normal person with highly problematic behavior, but can they change? And of course, the answer to this is that, a person, time will tell, because there is no test. I was talking to somebody earlier about this with personality disorder kind of stuff. It's not cut and dry. It's not like a person can take, it's not like, like a diabetic, they take they're going to measure their blood glucose, right? So they're going to test their blood sugar and they're going to say, okay, my blood sugar is, 220, right? My blood sugar is really high. So it's not like that. It's not like there's this cut and dry thing where we can say, okay, this person based on this particular test is for sure this, unless their behavior is like really extreme. But for a lot of people, especially emotional manipulators, they tend to hide it really well. And so when they go into get diagnosed, they tend to be on their absolute best behavior, which can fool, it can fool the person that's giving them this kind of assessing for personality disorders. So it's tricky. And then it kind of goes back to, okay, well, does this person are they sincere? Do they have empathy? Do they have remorse? Do they have a desire to change their behavior? Do they fully admit to what they've done? And are they actively working towards a resolution? If not, then they're not going to change, because those things have to be in place in order for change to happen. It doesn't matter if they're personality disordered or not. A person, sort of like, just like with alcoholism, right? So we know that there's treatment for alcoholism, just like there's treatment for anorexia or hoarding or, lots of other problematic behavior. But if a person is not ready and willing to change, then they're not ready or willing to change. So they're not going to change unless they see that unless they're ready to. And, like, so I guess kind of looking at behavior in those kinds of terms, like, is this person, are they just giving lip service? Like, are they just saying what they think they need to say in order for me to stick around? Or are they really willing to change? And then asking yourself, how long are you willing to stick around, and what kind of changes do you need to see? And, kind of at what point are you okay with walking away and saying, you know what, I tried? Ethan says, yes, narcissists apologize. For example, I'm sorry you did things and I did things. Yes, narcissists will generally blame you for everything. There's generally not a lot of insight into their part in things, because it's very immature. It's very childish, the way that they just don't have accountability for their actions. It's jaw-dropping to see another adult lack accountability. So in their mind, it's, well, they cheated because you weren't home, or they were on a dating site because they were bored, or they spent a bunch of money because their friends spent a bunch of money. It's like, none of it's good reasons. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that's what drove you to do that, but do you see that that's not a valid reason? But it doesn't, to their mind, they're justified in that, in everything that they do. And that's exhausting. The more covert ones, the more charming ones will flat out tell you, oh, I'm so sorry. I did, I really messed up. I will earn it. I don't want you to blindly trust me. I'm going to work really hard to earn your trust back, because that's what you deserve. And I really messed up a good thing, and you're a really good person. And I'm just going to really, I'm going to show you, I'm going to change, and things are going to be great. And they're all talk, and their actions do not line up with that for any length of time. So again, like, the only way that you can tell if a person's sincerely ready, willing, and able to change is to give them time. Because a normal person, if they're caught with bad behavior, a normal person is sincere, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I was thinking. It's not okay. I'm really sorry. This is kind of what was going on, and it won't happen again. And I'm willing to do what it takes to repair our relationship or our friendship. If I'm in a relationship, if we're married or whatever, I'm willing to live a life of transparency in order to rebuild trust. They're willing to do what it takes to repair the damage, whereas a narcissist won't. So yeah, Truth Seeker says, apologizing came naturally to me as a child, but my mom told me over and over, you're not sincere, until I believed her. How messed up is that? So yeah, and that's a part of, there was a great book. I need to keep a list of all the books and authors here. I'm going to make a note to get that. Hold on. List of books and authors. There was a book we read a while back. I think it was Patricia Evans. It was called The Verbally Abusive Relationship, and it's a fantastic book. You can get my notes on that book if you go to the book club, if my site is working, thriveafterabuse.com. If you go to the support group and go to book club, then you can see, or I think go to the tab that says book club, and it has all of my notes and stuff from the different books. But in that book, she has what she describes as the core of verbally abusive behavior. And part of that was telling a person, it's verbally abusive behavior is defining behavior. It's telling another person what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And I really liked how she phrased that, because I had never really thought of it that way. So kind of what you're describing. So somebody's saying, well, you're not being sincere, or you don't really mean that, or I know what you're thinking. The reality is, no, nobody knows what we're thinking because they're not inside of our head. So just like we don't know that about other people. Now, granted, if we have an emotional manipulator in our life, we can kind of, you can kind of think to yourself, okay, my guess is that they're being manipulative, or that this is what's going on, or I'm going to anticipate certain behavior, but we really don't know, we can't say, oh, well, you're not, or you're feeling this way, or that you're whatever, because we're not in their body. We don't really know. We can kind of guess because their behavior leaves clues, but we don't know for sure. And so that's why I think it's helpful to have, kind of rephrase that, to have I statements. Like, I'm feeling that this is really manipulative, and talking more in terms of behavior. Instead of telling another person, this is how you feel, this is what you're thinking. In the book too, she gives a great example that I think probably a lot of us are guilty of. I know I am. Talking with little kids. This was such a great example. So if a little kid falls down and scrapes their knee, a lot of adults, myself included, would say something like, oh, are you okay? And okay, you're fine, and would, brush off their knee and kind of, and with the intention of reassuring them. But that's a way of kind of diminishing their experience, because they're not fine. They fell down, they hurt their knee, it hurts. So being in pain and tears is totally understandable and justified. It's a valid response to pain. And so I love that she brought that up, because I would not have caught that any other way. So instead of kind of diminishing somebody's experience, to say, especially a child's experience, if they fall down and hurt their knee, instead of saying the opposite, instead of saying like, oh, no, you're fine, to say, oh boy, yeah, that looks like it hurts. Let's clean that off, and we're going to try to make this as as okay as we possibly can, and validating them. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Oh, but okay. Marie says, my mom would go, well, what do you want me to do? Kiss it? But she would say it in a mean tone. Yeah, and that's not, again, like, what are people thinking? Yeah, the phrase, I'm sorry you feel that way, is so crazy making and invalidating. I think you can tell people, just, again, like, it's the kind of the empathy. It's, so Hippie-Go-Lucky was saying, she's in retail, and so telling customers, I'm really sorry you feel that way, I think you can still validate. To me, that phrase in general is just so invalidating to somebody. So if a person's, whatever, even in a retail environment, if they're waiting in line, or they get a defective product, or they're really upset, to validate them. We've all been there, right? To just say, like, thank you so much for waiting in line, and I'm sorry, like, that this happened. This is really frustrating. I understand. I've been there too. Let's see what we can do to make this right, and to, help you to have a better experience here. Because this is not what we're about. Like, we're not about poor customer service, or waiting in long lines, or faulty products, right? It's just saying, okay, yeah, this shouldn't have happened to you. It's not okay. It's not how we like to do business. We're going to work on making this okay. We're going to work on making this right because we value you as a customer. Instead of telling somebody, I'm really sorry you feel that way, which probably just makes them even more angry. So Postmodern says, I'm afraid I fail at Gray Rock as a highly sensitive, emotionally sensitive person. So with Gray Rock, it can be difficult, especially if we do tend to, kind of over empathize with other people, especially people with problematic behavior. If we're over empathizing with them, Gray Rock, we don't have to be mean and we don't have to be insensitive or cruel. It's just having emotional distance from that person. So kind of like what we were talking about earlier, just realizing, okay, here's this person. They are, for whatever reason, they're really limited in this area. And, and again, like we all have limitations. But so I guess for me, kind of thinking of it in terms of that helps me to realize, okay, they're still human, but this is where their limits are. So where this is their 100%, but a normal person or what I need in my life that's only 10%. Like I need a person to be able to give a lot more. But because this is where they are, this is how they act, this is what their behavior is, I have to keep myself safe and sane. And so this is how I'm going to do that. I have to kind of keep this boundary there where I don't get roped in emotionally. And I kind of realize, okay, this person's not, they're not my people. Like we're not going to see eye to eye on things. We're they have a pattern of stirring the pot and of triangulating and of trying to just bait me in to arguing. And I don't want that in my life. And so I'm going to anticipate that behavior and I'm going to just keep myself emotionally distant from them. So our conversations are going to be polite. They're going to be short. They're going to be very superficial. We're not going to talk about anything that's going to try to, that they're going to perceive as causing some sort of narcissistic injury to where that's going to trigger that me versus you dynamic in them. So we're going to keep the conversation superficial and light and sort of like you would with a neighbor that you hardly knew or, your great aunt. Like it's kind of like on that level of polite, but, it's friendly, but it's not familiar. You're not letting them get to you, and you're just you realize kind of what you're walking into, and you just don't stay around it for any length of time because I've danced this dance before, and I'm tired of it. So I'm not going to keep doing this over and over again. But I think too a lot of times with most things in life is oftentimes it takes enough pain for us to kind of really learn that lesson. And I think Gray Rock, and of course really distancing ourselves from an emotional manipulator, oftentimes it takes us experiencing quite a bit of pain for us to really understand what we're dealing with. Because again, most of us can't even comprehend that people like this walk the earth. So it's hard, like it's really hard for us to fully embrace that this person is just manipulative and drama and pot stirring and abusive and problematic. It's hard for us to fully embrace that and to let go of the fantasy and the hope that maybe we could get through to them, or maybe that, kind of given enough love or therapy or rehab or church or understanding that they really could change. It's hard to let go of that, and it's hard to really see them for who they are. But, the sooner we do that, the better off we are. But some of us, myself included, it can take getting burned by their behavior several times before we really fully see, we're like, okay, yep, like this is what I'm dealing with, and I'm done. Like I'm done. I'm gonna keep myself at a distance as much as possible, and I'm not doing this in my life. I don't need this. So, hey, Martine is here. Martine, I was just I've been thinking about you a lot on and off for a while now, but it's really great to see you. I was just thinking about you the other day and wondering where you went and what's going on and how's life and all of that. Yeah, Ben says gray rock technique takes practice. It really, really does. And I think one of the hardest things about going gray rock is anticipating it and not getting knocked off center, because that's their goal as oftentimes. So, you know, like, it's one thing to kind of know ahead of time, okay, I'm going to anticipate this behavior. It's another thing to be able to keep your cool when they just give you these zingers out of left field that you just feel like you just got, knocked for a loop. We're like, wow, I did not see that coming. Like, I did not expect them to bring, they just upped and left me and our newborn child, and now they are filing for divorce, and 2 weeks later they're bringing a new girlfriend into court. What? So, like, surprise things like that, like they do this, like, highly emotional things, or you haven't heard from them in 6 months, then all of a sudden you get a text out of the clear blue saying that they love you, they'll do anything to make it work. These things that knock a person off center, that's what they're known for. And it can be hard to anticipate all of the different ways that a person can throw you for a loop. But I think just knowing that they're probably going to throw you for a loop and to expect anything, and if you're going to have to encounter them for any reason, whether it's court or shared custody, or you work with them, or they're, kind of what have you, to prepare yourself emotionally as you possibly can ahead of time. And here's a quick little mantra that I used to have. I still do have, depending on my need for it. But to tell yourself, I am not easily stressed, impressed, or intimidated. I am not easily stressed, impressed, or intimidated. And kind of just centering yourself. And so then when you do have to encounter them or have communication with them, that you're in that, kind of a right mindset to be able to handle anything that they throw your way. And again, it really does take practice. So don't get down on yourself if you find yourself becoming really, really reactive. You fall for it. They bait you in, they say something that's really provoking, and you fall for it because you are human. And these are incredibly emotional situations and dynamics. And just everything about it is incredibly difficult. Everything about it. Healing from it, getting validation from others, getting support from family and friends, feeling heard, trying to figure it out yourself. There's a lot to it. So if you do fall into being reactive versus being responsive, because that's a difference there. Reactive is they give an action, you give a reaction. You're just reacting to them. Giving a response is something that's more planned out. So if you know ahead of time, okay, they're gonna focus on your weight or your parenting or your car or your job or what have you, to have an idea in your head of how you're going to respond to that instead of just that knee-jerk reaction. And again, it does take practice, but you will get there, and it's very empowering when you do get there, where you're like, you know what, I own my space, I own my responses, I own I am not going to let this person ruin my day or steal any more of my joy or happiness. I see their behavior for what it is. I anticipate it. I see their limiting behavior as limiting. This is not a reflection of me. This is a reflection of them. Like, this is all on them. If they think acting dramatic or erratic or emotional is somehow a negative reflection on me, they're wrong, because it's making them look like a fool. It's making them look dramatic and erratic and emotional. So I'm not gonna feed into this. I'm just gonna let their behavior speak for itself, and I'm not gonna let them steal my joy. So yes, Truth Seeker says, "Oh, I just lost the." I just scrolled up, but real quick, Martine says, "My most common mantra is I am perfectly safe. I am safe in spite of this." I like that. I like that. That's a good one. Truth Seeker was talking about their ex, saying she's as sweet as cherry pie to everybody else, but to them, she's just awful. And yes, and that's incredibly crazy making when that happens, because it's you're the one that's seeing her true self, or at least that side of her true self that's abusive, and it's hard to get support and understanding when other people are not seeing that side of her. Oh, so I'm sorry that you're going through that. That's really frustrating and crazy making, and I'm sure exhausting. Salon says, "My sister is 14. She gets lonely as the only nearby family the divorce has left her with is myself and our mother. Should I carry on spending time with her or focus entirely on myself to get better?" Well, I think it depends on kind of where, there's a lot of different factors at work, like kind of what your dynamic is with her, and kind of what you feel that you need to do in order to heal. If you feel like you've got the emotional energy, and it doesn't have to be a lot. And if this is assuming too that you guys have a good relationship, you can still give her support in ways that you have the energy to. So if that's texting her or spending, I don't know, a day a week with her, or chatting her up on Facebook, or there's lots of different ways that you can reach out to her. And of course there's lots of different ways that you can reach out to her that are more or less time consuming. So it just kind of depends on like what kind of what works for you, what works for the dynamic between you and her, and what your relationship is. But if you have that good dynamic, and you do feel that you are able to reach out and support her as well, then for sure, by all means, go for it. Healing, when we're healing from something like this, we still have to be in life, and we might feel like isolating, but I think more often than not, it can be more helpful to be around other people that understand, and that other people that support us, and to continue to do things that we enjoy, and to not think to ourselves, okay, well, I'm just going to hold myself up in this house until I heal. And then once I heal, then I'll get back out in life. Because there is no clearly defined line in the sand of, okay, now I'm healed. It's a gradual process. It's already happening, even though you might not feel like it is. It is. So this is something that happens every single day in many, many different ways, this whole healing process. So to make sure that you're still actively participating in life, and trying to bring as much joy and happiness in your life as possible, I think does help a person to move forward, because the heaviness that is healing from something like this, it can be so isolating, and it can keep a person to the point where like they don't want to talk to their friends, they don't want to talk to their family, they don't want to talk to anybody, they just want to be alone. And I think that can have the opposite effect, where healing can take longer because that person's, they're not getting out back into life. And I get it, I've been there. So I get how it's sort of like, you know what, I feel too wounded to have fun. I feel too wounded to be able to reach out to anybody else. I feel too wounded to do anything other than stay in the house and sleep, or watch TV, or isolate, or what have you. But it that can become its own problem if a person's doing that for too long. So let's see. Yes, Ben says, I was isolating for the better part of 4 years. I am not so sure if that was a good idea. Allison says, I was too wounded to trust anyone. And, you know, that is so common, and it's so true. And it is easy to isolate for a long time, and for months to turn into years. That's very, very common. And, you know, I think, again, this kind of goes back to that mindset and that mantra of, you know what, I am not going to let this person steal any more of my joy. Even if you don't feel joyful, even if you don't feel like getting out in public, even if, but just kind of making that declaration of, I'm not going to let this ruin my life. Because the cool thing is just by making that declaration, your brain is hard at work trying to chew on that, trying to figure that out, and to figure out how it can make that happen. Because our brain loves a good problem. It chews on a problem like a dog chews on a bone. And if you kind of set this intention, your brain really does, and this is oftentimes it's not a conscious thing, it's going to continue to work on that until it can find a way to bring that into existence. So if you're making that declaration of, you know, and we talked about this last time, there's these 4 mindsets that I strongly recommend everybody have. These 4 mindsets, I really do feel, move a person from victim to survivor to thriver. And these mindsets are, and real quick before I get into that, this is not to say that, you know, feeling like a victim is a bad thing, because we were victimized, and that's a very legitimate thing. But that staying a victim can keep a person really stuck. And so there's that fine line there between being like, well, I am a victim, this really did happen to me. At the same time, I know that I need to find some sort of way to reclaim my power and control so I can move forward from this into where I don't stay a victim. And okay, so that said, there's 4 mindsets. The first one is making the declaration that you're not going to let this end your life. Meaning that if you're feeling depressed, that suicide is off the table. It's not even an option. Because our minds, it's so easy for our minds to be all over the place, to feel really the highs and lows, and you're like, you know what, I think I'm going to be okay. And then 20 minutes later, you hear from them or something, you're triggered, and you're like, okay, I'm not okay. I'm a million miles away from being okay, and I don't know if I can do this. And then it's so easy to get caught up in those spirals of thinking, and then the anger and the rage and the overwhelm and all of it. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, and myself included, struggling with intense amounts of depression and hopelessness, and toying with the idea of suicide. And So it really does, it really, really, really does help to realize, okay, you know what? Okay, here's the deal. That option is off the table. Like, I'm not even going to entertain that option. I'm not even going to think about it. Because if you don't even let your mind go there, then you don't have to, like, wrestle with not doing that. You don't have to think about, should I do this? Should I not do this? Like, you don't even have to. That's a terrible, awful, sad place. And I've been there. I've been there many times in my life. It's a hard place to be at when you're entertaining the idea of suicide. So taking that as an option off the table. The second mindset is embracing the fact that I am not going to let this destroy my life. So now that you've made the decision, I'm not going to let this end my life. Okay, now we're going to take it up a notch. I'm not going to let this destroy my life. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, I feel like my life was destroyed. So, like, where do I go from there? No, it's not. Your life is not destroyed because you're still here. And you have time in front of you. And so no matter what your age is, you have time. So you can rebuild, and you can use, and I've talked about this a lot, the biggest benefit is in when you go through something like this, that you feel like, this destroyed my life, and you look around and your whole life feels like a giant pile of rubble. Everything is a mess. Your finances are a mess. Your housing is a mess. You're a mess. You've gained a bunch of weight. You've lost a bunch of weight. You're like, my life is in shambles. Okay. This is your ground zero. This is your place on which you're going to rebuild. And the cool thing is, when you look around and you have your life, and your life is a pile of rubble, you get to consciously choose which pieces you're going to rebuild your life with. And that's amazing, because when you start doing that, when you start consciously rebuilding your life, and you have this self-awareness, and you are like tapped in, tuned in, turned on, like, what path you're headed on, and you're like, okay, this is what I want in my life, this is what I don't want in my life, this is the direction I'm heading. At that point, that's really when the magic begins to happen, because then you start living a life of purpose on purpose. And that is just, it's so incredibly empowering. So that is the second mindset of that you're not going to let this ruin your life. The third mindset is the mindset of, okay, I am going to use this for my highest and greatest good. So what happened, and this is a hard, again, this is not easy. This is a hard thing to, sometimes it's hard to even say out loud. But if you can embrace that, okay, this happened to me. It's not right. It's not fair. I did not deserve it. It's not justified. I'm angry. I'm feeling all of these different ways. That's totally valid. Totally, totally valid. There would almost be something wrong with you if you didn't feel that way. Okay? So, but realizing at the same time, this completely unfair, uncalled for, awful, ridiculous, painful, hurtful situation, this happened. It happened. And so now, instead of, because we've already made the mindset shift of, I'm not going to let this destroy my life, right? So if I'm going to make this work for my highest and greatest good, then I need to start thinking of things in terms of, these are not These are not roadblocks. These are not stumbling stones. Like this is the path. These are not stumbling stones. These are stepping stones. Like, I'm going to rebuild my life on this. I'm going to be stronger for it. I'm going to be wiser for it. I'm going to make this help me to become more self-aware. I am going to squeeze out every single thing I possibly can from this experience, because I'm not going to let this ruin my life. And truly, the best revenge is a good life. It really, really is. It really is. And of course, the added benefit is, revenge aside, is you have a good life. You're consciously rebuilding a life for yourself that you're choosing. So, and the fourth mindset to that is, okay, so now, and again, you don't even need to know how to make this happen. You just have to set that intention. Your brain is going to start working towards that. I know when I realized that, okay, I remember making that declaration out of anger. You know what? Yeah. Like, not only is this not going to ruin my life, insert stream of cuss words here, this is not going to ruin my life. Like, I am going to use this for my highest and greatest good. Because you know why? F you, that's why. And that anger really drove me for a long time, but it drove me in a positive direction, because these things, it doesn't take a lot, for these types of situations to make a person become really bitter and angry. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person. So I want to have power and control back over myself and my life. And I'm going to determine what this means to me and what I'm going to do with that. Because I can't control what happened to me. I can't control how they react, but I can control over what I do with this situation. So just know that. And then the fourth mindset is, not only am I going to make this work towards my highest and greatest good, I am going to take this and I'm going to make it work towards the highest and greatest good of others. And with that transition, the highest and greatest good for you, and boom, the highest and greatest good for others, that's when, you are just living a life, you're chugging along on all cylinders. And when you have that mindset across the board, not just with narcissistic abuse, but across the board, anything negative that comes your way, or something that you would perceive as negative comes your way, man, you're eating that for breakfast. You're just man, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to take this. I'm not going to let it end my life. I'm not going to let it ruin my life. I'm going to let it work towards my highest and greatest good. And I'm going to let it work towards the highest and greatest good of others. When you embrace those four mindsets, especially those last two, you will very quickly realize that nothing bad is happening to you, because you're using it for your highest and greatest good, and you're using it for the highest and greatest good of others. So, and it's weird because other people are going to start looking at you and wondering, what are you so happy about? What's going so right for you? And it can be hard. It can be hard when we have challenges come our way to be like, okay, if I'm going through a bankruptcy, no, Dana, that's a bad thing. Or this is, I've got a house that's going into foreclosure, or I've got I'm losing custody. I've got these really major, for real, no joke things going on. But again, these things are going to go on. That ball is in motion. And so all we can do, we only have control over what we have control over. If you have done everything in your power to prevent bankruptcy, to prevent a foreclosure, to prevent losing custody, if you've done all these things and that ball is still in motion and there's nothing more that you can do, then all you can do is say, okay, then I need to make this work for me. Because worrying about it, stressing about it, getting depressed over it, falling apart at the seams over it, this is not going to serve me in the long run. It's okay if you want to do that for a short period of time, but I would encourage you to get real clear as to how long you're going to do that for. And so you don't fall into that funk where you're isolating for a really long period of time. So then you're realizing, okay, I'm going through this. This just is. This ball is in motion, and I am going to use this for my highest and greatest good. And I think it can, in a lot of ways, be, it can be helpful if you have children around, because then I think in some ways it's easier to use this too for their highest and greatest good, because these are all learning lessons for them. So it's sort of like, okay, you know what? This is what's going on. Like going through bankruptcy, or we're losing the house, or kind of what have you, and be like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to use this for the highest and greatest good of my child. And here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, okay, kiddo, this is what's going on. And yeah, this is incredibly stressful, or, this is, or yeah, if they're feeling scared or whatever, this is what's going on, but this is how we're going to handle it. And because life, it can throw us curveballs, and we've already done everything that can be done. I've already done everything that I can do. And so this is what's going to happen. So now we're, as a family, me and you, we're going to roll with this. And we're going to try to squeeze out as much as we can from this experience, and we're going to make it work for our highest and greatest good. And so let's brainstorm some ways that we can make this work for our highest and greatest good, and then open up that conversation. And then realize, okay, you know what? If we're losing the house, then okay, this is how we're going to handle it, and we're going to have this experience. The goal for this is we're going to use this to try to bring us closer together, or to improve our communication, or this is, by filing bankruptcy and going through foreclosure. I had a friend of mine, this was about 15 years or so ago. Her husband was diagnosed with bipolar, and he basically had a nervous breakdown, and she'd always known that that there was issues, there was concerns that she had about his behavior. He had a nervous breakdown, and then later he was diagnosed as bipolar. And he quit functioning. He couldn't work. And at the time they had, I think their son he was young. He was like maybe 6. And she was terrified. She was terrified to leave him alone with their son. They had bills, and kind of long story short, they ended up losing everything. And she said they had to sell everything. They had to file bankruptcy. They went into foreclosure, and she had the cost of their meals planned out. It was like $1.34 a meal. I mean, talk about like budgeting. And she said she was so scared. She was so overwhelmed. Here her husband is incredibly sick. He's not functioning. She has this little boy who's terrified, who's also losing everything. And she decided, she's like, okay, you know what? We're going to make the best of this, because she tried and was not able, to save the house or to get out of bankruptcy. And she's like, okay, you know what? This is where we are. So let's get a plan. And they ended up moving to New Mexico, and they camped all along the way, which of course her little boy loved. He thought it was a blast, but the reality was they didn't have money. They didn't have money to stay in a hotel. And they finally got to New Mexico, and this was her plan. She's like, hey, we're going to make this into an adventure. And they really did. And, she was able to rebuild. She has her own business now. Things are going much, much better. They're much happier. But she really took that experience and just made it work for the highest and greatest good of herself and for her family. So It can be done. It's not an easy mindset to embrace, but it does help just to make that declaration and start moving in that direction. And getting support along the way if you can, for sure. So, let's see. We scroll up and get some comments here. Yeah, Postmodern says, if someone gets sarcastically snarky and caustic at me, my defenses go up. I'm like, nope, been there, done that, and I'm not playing. Yes, and that's what can be so empowering is when you can see these games for what they are, or these behaviors for what they are, and not get roped into it. It is like the best feeling ever. There's a person in my life, and this was, well, I should say a person that used to be in my life, a former coworker of mine, who continually just loved to, this was my perception of things, loved to kind of bait me in to these arguments where it was very triangulating, it was very pot stirring, it was very, they'd kind of take you, like he would take me down this road of kind of getting me all worked up in one direction, against something, but then spin it around, and then I can't even describe, like, it was weird, like would spin it back around to almost insult me. Like he would provoke an emotion and then deny it and then spin it around and then blame me. That's exactly what was going on. So it was confusing and crazy making, and it was so empowering because then it was sort of like, okay, you kind of realize this is what this person's behavior is, and this is going to be my response to it. So when I could see that train coming down the track, when he would say, like, okay, well, what do you think about this other coworker, or this one work policy is so ridiculous, and to just not get baited into it was the most empowering thing ever, because it was sort of like, yeah, gray rock, just staying totally neutral. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't really think a whole lot about this other coworker or this work policy. And I don't know. I don't think too much about it. And just not giving them a satisfaction of getting baited in or arguing or any of it. And it's such a good feeling to just slip through that net and walk away. So I hear ya. Like, oh, I've got your number. Like, I've done this dance a few times. So, let's see. Let me scroll. Postmodern says, I'm really glad I'm here with you all. The red flags are very helpful. The books are helpful. This chat is very helpful. Thank you all. Yes, I agree. Thank you guys for everything too. It's, it's the community and all of this that makes this so awesome and so helpful. So yes, I am in Michigan. And my eyes are watering, and it's because I have a fan. It's not because I'm crying. It's not even because I'm tired. I'm not. I have a fan blowing straight at me. Because it's hot in here, and I can't, I think I'd said this before, like, I can't have my air conditioning on when I do these live streams because it's too loud. So, I have a fan. So, that's, have this Beyonce hair going on. It's hot here now. It's 11 o'clock here in Michigan. Yeah, I have this weird thing lately with fans. where it's the sound of them almost gives me vertigo, which is terrible because I don't know what I'm gonna do if that becomes the case. So very strange. Yes, I am growing out my fringe. I think maybe I'm not. I don't do my hair in the summertime because it's too humid. So my hair just is poofy and does whatever, and so we'll see. Let's see. Somebody was asking about an emotional flashback. Let's see. Marie says, whenever I get stuck in my head about some crap that happened in the past, I go, I am having an emotional flashback. Yes, that phrase, emotional flashback, that was a huge aha moment for me. I don't think I'd ever heard that phrase before, and I had never really thought about it in my own life either. Like I could, it's just having the vocabulary for what's going on. So knowing like, okay, yeah, I'm all of a sudden I'm in a really weird mood, or I'm crying, or I'm angry, or I'm defensive. But I could never pinpoint why. And then coming across the term emotional flashback, and it was like, OMG, yes, that makes total sense. The book and my notes on the book, either way you want to go with that, the Complex PTSD by Pete Walker discusses that in much more depth about emotional flashbacks and what they are and how we tend to experience them and why we experience them, and kind of how to ride one through, which I thought was really, really helpful. That's probably been, like, if I had to pick my biggest aha moment in the past year, I think it might be emotional flashback. Like, that just explains so much. And it's one of those concepts too, like once you have the word for it and you have that awareness of when you're having one, which almost it to me, all it took was hearing the term and being like, okay, that's what that is. Then when I began having them, I was able to realize what was going on and not get caught up in them. Because then it was like, wait a minute. Like, I'm having a very disproportionate reaction to something that's not going on. And that always weirded me out. I could never quite figure out, like, why am I feeling these intense emotions for seemingly no reason? Because I felt crazy at the time, and I felt like I was overreacting, but I didn't know why. And so to have that clarity was really, really huge. And it's really changed the way that I perceive like my parents' behavior. And I think it's really improved our dynamic, because a lot of the way that I was feeling was like residual stuff. And I just didn't even realize it. So I don't know, very, very, very interesting. I'll be curious to see what other people have to say about emotional flashbacks, and if they've experienced, or when they experience them, kind of what they feel about all that and how they write them out. Yes, totally. Yep. So Nick says, so I feel like I am in mid-argument with my narcissist. Yep. Yeah, it's that intense feeling of like anger or sadness or just disproportionate kind of unpleasant emotion, I guess. So if you're like, a song comes on, or you smell a certain smell, or something triggers you, even though it might not register as a trigger, like something triggers you where you're like, all of a sudden, like, you find yourself thinking, and it might not be so direct. Like, you might just find yourself all of a sudden feeling really defensive, feeling really angry, feeling really tense, really on edge, really defensive. And, you might not really be able to pinpoint why. So here's an example in my life of kind of like an obscure trigger and a kind of an obscure reaction that I could not figure out for years, like really up until I read this book last month. Like I had no idea what was going on. So for me, I really felt, we used to go to church every single Sunday. And I also went to religious schools up until high school. So I went to Catholic school for a while, and then I went to a Methodist school. So I went to private school up until high school. And I had always had like a lot of defensiveness and animosity and like discomfort going into a church. And I didn't know why. And I mean, for years, I was like, what, is there something I'm like repressing? You know, why do I feel this way? I remember even being, you know, like a teenager, you know, 13, 14, and being like, what is my problem? Like, this is so weird. I'm angry. Like, I'm just so angry. And then it dawned on me after reading that book, what it was I really felt ignored and unloved pretty much my whole life. And that was my perception of a lot of things, whether or not, you know, I don't think a lot of it was necessarily intended by my parents. I just didn't get the, you know, the affection that I needed. So I think I became resentful when the time that we did spend together was at church, and it was in public, and it was sort of this whole display of we're this happy, close family. And I felt like it was a lie. And I didn't connect that up until I read that book, but that's exactly what it was. I mean, I remember being a kid and during church, you know, everybody would hold hands and sing, or in Catholic Mass, it's the whole kind of greet the person next to you and you hug them. And I didn't want anybody touching me. I was just like angry. I was angry. And I didn't know why. And that was why, is I felt like, you know, no, like I need, you know, like this is not enough. Like 1 hour a week in church, in public, for you to tell me that you love me and for you to be affectionate is not okay. Like, it's not cool. And so no, like, you want me to be affectionate with you, but when I need it, you're never there. So no. Super interesting. So church is still, even as an adult, a huge trigger for me, but that's why. It's not even about religion. It's you know, and I'm don't get me going on that, but like it's which I thought it was for a long time. But it was about the dynamic that I had with my family. I just would not have guessed that. So maybe like a more direct trigger for a person might be, let's say your ex worked at Holiday Inn. I don't know. And so now every single time you drive past a Holiday Inn, your shoulders go up, you feel tense, you feel angry, and it might not even register on your radar because you might even be in a different state. And next thing you know, like you're feeling in a bad mood, and it could be something as obscure as okay, well, they, you know, you used to work at a Holiday Inn, so that's still in your mind, that's associated with them. It's kind of this negative association with them. Or it could be something like a song comes on the radio, or it's the smell of their perfume or their cologne, and next thing you know, you're in this really bad mood. And of course, most thoughts tend to beget other thoughts. So it's kind of becomes this cycle where if you have one negative thought, then that kicks off this chain reaction of other negative thoughts, which may or may not even be remotely related. But next thing you know, you're just in a really, really rotten mood. So emotional flashbacks are very, very interesting. So, yes. Sylvia says, I get flashbacks seeing men that look like my husband. There are so many. Yes, and that's very common. If, for a person to have a flashback, if the person drives, if your ex has a red Mustang, every time you see a red Mustang, to feel, on high alert, or to have an uncomfortable feeling or uncomfortable reaction, to be triggered by that. Or yeah, somebody that looks, our brain is such an interesting, fascinating thing, the way that it links up cause and effect when it comes to pain. And sometimes it's more conscious, and sometimes it's not. It's very subconscious, or at a deeper level, kind of like how I am with church. Some of the triggers are more understandable, sort of like, okay, well, my ex drove a red Mustang, so now I find myself getting on edge around red Mustangs. Like, that kind of makes sense. But it's the deeper triggers that are interesting. And somebody had said too, it's when they experience a trigger, they look at it as, this is something that that they need to work on. This is something that's been now being brought to their attention that they can now address. And that's very true. So once you kind of get further down the line with healing, you can start examining, when you get some emotional distance between yourself and that situation, then you can start examining, okay, this is really interesting that I'm being, and not even necessarily triggered. I mean, back up even a little further from that. Like, okay, what's bothering me? Because generally, whatever's bothering, not just us, but people in general, whatever's bothering us, there's a reason for that. And it generally is a message that something's out of alignment with us. So for example, I had a friend the other day who was talking about, and this is very common, I think, she was talking about Facebook and how it really bothered her to go on Facebook because so many people, of course, are putting up all these pictures of how happily married they are and how great their kids are and how, great their life is. And it was making her feel really bad, which I think that's very common for a lot of people. But I think the deeper message in that is, when we find ourselves being bothered by something, it's like in that situation, it's generally because we don't have that and we want it. So it can be interesting to pay attention, to bring awareness to our own behavior and kind of think about, well, why am I really bothered by this? Because there's a saying out there, that we are rarely upset for the reasons that we think. And there's so much truth to that. We might think, oh, well, we're just really bothered by, them pretending to be happily married when we know the truth. But it's probably a little bit deeper than that. Or if we're bothered by a coworker, or we're bothered by, kind of just whatever, like why? And that's kind of where the magic happens, because that's where self-awareness comes from, is as asking ourselves, like, what's really going on here, and kind of trying to get to the bottom of it. Yes, people are talking about Facebook and that they've deactivated Facebook and that they're not on there, that much. I agree. I spend time in my support group on Facebook. I don't, unless I'm like invited to an event or something like that, I don't respond. I don't, I definitely don't go look up exes or anything like that. Let's see. That is a good question. Oh, interesting. Oh my gosh, there's so many good comments. Hold on. Sylvie says, I heard that we are bothered by people who share our faults. That is really interesting. I had never heard it phrased that way before. I like that. I have to think about that for a little bit. We are bothered by people who share our faults. I would say that's definitely true. And probably bothered by people who maybe have what we want could also be part of it. Or yeah, maybe those are kind of like the two main ones. But it is interesting to see how different people perceive situations, and and kind of what they're bothered by. That to me is just absolutely fascinating, because again, like, and so much of this comes from like self-awareness and like going through all of this gives a person a tremendous amount of insight and awareness to where you might not ever get that any other way. So because when you really become in tune with unhealthy behavior and healthy behavior and human behavior in general, then you kind of have a leg up as to what's going on in life, and it's just kind of leads to a lot of insight. So stuff that I would think like problematic behavior, everybody kind of perceives it differently. Sort of like how I was saying earlier, their bad behavior is not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them. And once you do get enough emotional distance from that person, when you start perceiving things differently, it's like everything changes. It really, really does. It's like the chains have been broken, like the cage has been opened, and you're like, okay, I'm free. I'm free because I perceived this so differently. I mean, for so long I was locked into this dynamic where I was trying to change them or trying to improve myself and or do all of these things to try to make our relationship work. And then you just realize, oh, this is just what it is. Like, this is just their behavior. And once you accept it, not meaning that you have to like it, but once you realize like this is what they do, then it's like you're free, and you might not even be bothered by it anymore. You might even be entertained by it because you're like, wow, this gaslighting and nonsense is nonsense. And and there's probably going to come a time where when you see this happening and you just kind of take a step back and you just think, this is absolutely ridiculous. And you truly, the veil is lifted. Like you see it for what it is, and you just don't get roped into it. And then because you're not so roped in emotionally, it's a lot easier, of course, to not be so bothered by it. Because you accept it. Like, you're not trying to change them or to change the dynamic. All you're doing, you're accepting their behavior for what it is, and then you're anticipating what they might do, and then you're responding. It's totally different, right, from what we've normally been doing, which is kind of holding on to hope that they could change and trying everything in our power to change them, and then kind of being in denial about their problematic behavior, and not anticipate, and then being caught off guard every single time that they do have bad behavior, which is an exhausting, crazy making way to live. So yeah, interesting. Badger says, I've been drinking too much lately to cope with stress. It's not healthy. Has anyone else gone that way? Yeah, I think a lot of people do. You know, it's and I think in a lot of ways in some ways it can be almost more socially acceptable to just drink. You know, people will say, I think especially, I don't mean this necessarily in like a sexist way, but I do mean this in a more kind of gender specific way. Which maybe that's me splitting hairs, but I think here's what I mean. I think, for example, I think with men, oftentimes it's, you know, oftentimes men are raised where they do not express emotion, and or their other guy friends are not comfortable with them expressing emotion. And so I think a lot of men really struggle with supporting other men that are going through hard times, because it's just it's not something that's embraced in many cultures with men. Whereas with women, it's more, you know, we're taught it's totally okay to express your emotions. So women tend to do a really great job at expressing their emotions, but they tend to struggle with expressing anger. Men are more encouraged, I think, to express anger than they are with expressing sadness. So men tend to express anger more so than sadness. Women tend to express sadness more so than anger. And so and again, this is just kind of by and large, but I think it's more socially acceptable for men to tell other men, you know what, hey, let's go out to the bar, we're going to go drink, or you know, you just kind of, they don't really know what to do. Whereas with women, you know, this is our forte. Like, we're like, oh, you're in trouble, yeah, you know, come on over, we'll again, this is just generalizations here, but women tend to be like, okay, let's have these really long phone conversations, let's talk about it, what's going on with you. And they're okay, they're okay with talking about sadness or intense emotion like that. Women don't know how to handle anger, so a lot of women have more, you know, passive aggressive type behaviors, I think, is probably more normal. Whereas men, you know, men can, of course, can be passive aggressive too, but it's, I think a lot of men are more comfortable expressing anger or upset. But again, gross generalizations there. And yes, I agree. Men that can learn to express their true emotions are incredibly strong. I think it takes a lot of strength for both, for men to say, you know what, I'm having a really hard time right now. I need some support, and this is how I need you guys to support me. And I don't want to go out to the bar. Like, I don't want to just get drunk to handle this. Like, I'm really going through it, and I just need you guys to listen. And same with women. I think true strength is saying, you know what, I'm really freaking angry, and I'm not going to slam doors, and I'm not going to, you know, withhold sex, and I'm not going to do all of these things that a lot of women, I think, typically do. We're going to have this open and honest conversation about why I'm upset. And it's hard. It's hard when we're, you know, you kind of go through your whole life not expressing certain emotions. You know, it's tough. Cecilia was saying that her ex-boyfriend withheld sex. Yes, and this is, again, just kind of gross generalizations here. Yes, for sure, men can withhold sex too, and men can, there's men out there that are very emotional and have a really hard time being open and honest about their anger. And then there's women who are really angry and have a really hard time being open and honest about sadness or love or connection. So, but, you know, a lot of this, it starts so young when kids are little. It's, I don't know, it's problematic, you know. We tend to kind of teach little boys that it's not okay to cry, and we teach little girls that it's not okay to really be aggressive, or we socialize kids very differently according to gender. So yeah, I think, medicating with anything, with food, with alcohol, with drugs, with gambling, with any type of like quick fix, it's it can be a slippery slope, and it can cause more problems. And I think really one of the best ways out of all of that is to realize, I think, in part, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel rage. It's okay to have all of the feelings that you're feeling. Perfectly normal for an abnormal situation. Again, if you went through this and you're like, well, oh well, and you just had that amazing attitude right off the bat, I would think that there would be something wrong with a person, that they're in denial about what's really going on. Because part of healing, I think, is experiencing those intense emotions, and it's going through them. So, but I think, again, too, making the decision, okay, yeah, I'm really angry and I'm really sad and I'm really hurt and I feel like my life is blown to pieces. But at the same time, with all that said, I'm going to feel these feelings because it's valid. And I can't really run from them even if I wanted to. But at the same time, realizing I'm not going to let this ruin my life. And so to make a concerted effort to take time to still try to find joy in every day. Even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it's watching the sunrise in the morning or the sunset in the evening, or having a good cup of coffee or a good cup of tea, or taking time for gratitude or whatever. To me, that really is incredibly healing, doing that, because it's a way to reclaim your power and control, and to kind of train your brain that, yes, while all of these other awful things might be going on, there's still a lot that's good and right with the world. And to not let this trauma completely suck you under, because it really can. So, yeah, Postmodern says, I had trouble repressing my anger. I punched holes in walls. Yeah, I'd believe it. These dynamics bring out parts of us that I think a lot of us don't even think even existed. I mean, I have never in my life felt rage to the level that I felt when I was going through this. And again, totally appropriate emotion. That's an appropriate emotion to feeling really violated and exploited. But it doesn't make it any less unpleasant. I mean, it was awful feeling that way. It was scary feeling that way. I talked about this in one of the red flag videos, but I remember, before you go through something like this, you see shows like Snapped or, Mystery ID, and they talk about, somebody snapping and killing somebody, and you just think, oh my gosh, how on earth, like, why do people get to that point? Like, why wouldn't they just divorce, or why wouldn't they just move away from their crazy neighbor? Like, why do people get to that point? How can they get there? And then you have something like this happen to you, and then you're like, oh, I get it. Like, totally get it. I get it. And that's scary, because I don't want to get that. Like, I don't want to, hurt anybody. But it's intense emotion, and it's incredibly uncomfortable to have intense emotion like that. So I like that. Brian says, I'm not a quote person, and they usually piss me off, but I'm not going to let this ruin my life. I love that. Good. Thank you. I'm glad. I think that's a really empowering mindset to develop. Diana says, I force a smile daily. It really does change your brain chemistry. It really does. So there's a whole, I don't know if I'd say therapy so much, but there's a thing called laughter yoga. You look it up on YouTube. I'm sure there's videos out there. It's really funny. I had to do this when I was working at a domestic violence shelter. We always had these different in-services, and one of them was from a woman who was teaching, I think it was laughter yoga or what she called laughter therapy. And it literally was laughing and making funny faces and practicing laughing from, different depths of within your chest and your diaphragm. And at first I was like, this is ridiculous. But we got into it, and you can't help but laugh. Like it was so ridiculous. And of course everybody's just laughing at nothing, which is even funnier. And then other people are walking by and we're all like laughing at nothing. And of course that just gets you more and more laughing. And it really does help to just change your mood, even for a little bit. There were studies done on, I think it was college students, and this was a psychological study, and they were something to do with depression. And what they did was I think they tried different medication. They had like a placebo group. They had, if I could be totally way off base on this, so I hope I'm not, but I might be. I want to say that they had one group that had an antidepressant, one group that had like a placebo, so like a sugar pill, and then one group that they had them put a pencil or a pen in their mouth, but hold it with their teeth like this. And the group that did that, I think, had even a higher, their depression lifted even more so than with the antidepressants, if I remember correctly. But what's interesting about this, so the reason that they were thinking that this works is it's cool because our physiology affects our psychology. Just like our psychology, like our thinking affects our actions, but our actions affect our thinking. So even if you don't feel good, like don't wait to feel good. You can do something like that. Like you can go laugh in the bathroom mirror. You can, put a pencil or a pen in your mouth for a little bit and smile. You can go watch, for me, I watched a lot of comedy during that time in my life. And I am a huge fan of Dave Chappelle. And I watched that one skit in particular with Prince, where it was blouses versus like they were playing basketball, and it was supposed to like shirts versus skins, and it was blouses versus skins or whatever. Freaking hilarious. That just never got old for me. So finding something, realizing like, okay, yeah, my whole life feels like it's falling apart right now, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that I can't take a time out and go watch a comedy or go enjoy nice weather. Like those two things can still be co-occurring. Just because everything's falling apart and things feel really overwhelming doesn't mean that you can't. It's sort of like, it feels like carrying around a big sack of rocks, right? Like there's just all of this heaviness. You're like, okay, this is my cross to bear. This is the weight that I must carry. And I'm going to wait until I heal to set this down. But my goodness, this is so heavy. This is so heavy. But I'm just going to carry it around because I don't know what else to do with it. I mean, that's really, I think, how, PTSD feels. It feels like I don't want to carry this around, but I feel like I can't set it down either. But there's a middle ground to that. There really, really is. And the middle ground is realizing, okay, I'm not my brain. My brain is not ready to set this fully down. So that's okay. But I'm tired. I'm tired of lugging this around. So I'm going to just practice putting this down. I'm going to practice putting all of this heaviness and this hurt and this heartache down. And I'm going to set this down for 10 minutes or an hour. And I'm going to go out with a friend to a movie, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go watch something funny on YouTube. And then when that's over, if I want to come pick this trauma back up and carry it with me, because it's again, our brains are funny. It's this feeling of, unless we obsess about it, unless we think about it all the time, then you know, we have all of these associations that go along with that. Like I like, if we let ourselves heal from this, I think some people struggle with this. If I let myself heal from this, then that somehow means that I'm okay with what happened to me. Or here's another example. I was talking to a family member of mine. Her best friend lost her husband. They were married for close to 50 years. She's having a really, really hard time with it. And she had said she feels really guilty having fun in life. That, I think in her mind, it's dishonoring her deceased husband by moving forward and having fun. So she feels she's really stuck in her grief. And so it's that kind of feeling where we feel stuck about something. Obviously she's not ready to move on, and she's not ready to feel happy. She feels guilty being happy because she doesn't want to forget him and what he meant to her, and her pain is still very real. So this is where this concept of like finding a middle ground comes in handy. We're like, okay, this is my grief, and this is my sadness, and this is all of that, and it's still really there, and I'm still going to be able to pick this back up, but I'm going to try to regain power and control over this. So I'm going to set this down for a little bit, and then I can choose to pick it back up when I feel that I need to. And doing that more and more, it really does help to realize that we are in control over this, that we can put it down, and we can pick it back up. We don't have to carry it with us 24 hours a day. And also too, like, in her situation, I think there can be some benefit from kind of reframing her understanding of things, because I think it can be helpful to be like, oh no, honoring being happy and embracing life is a really great way, I think, to honor the dead. And because they don't have life right now, right? Or at least they don't have life in this physical form as we understand it. But to say like, okay, this is how I'm going to go pay tribute or homage to this person and to their life, as I'm going to, if they really loved to, I don't know, they really liked animals. So I'm going to go donate time or money to an animal shelter in their memory. Like, that's a nice way to honor a person. Destroying our life to honor them is that's not healthy, and it's not, it doesn't honor them. So, but, with other trauma, in this book, I think it was the Body Keeps Score, he talks a little bit about that with like different war veterans feeling the same way, with feeling like they can't, like, he was talking about one war veteran who said he would refuse to get on antidepressants, and he would refuse to take a medication to help with nightmares. And the veteran had said, he's like, I feel like if I do that, I am dishonoring those that died. So it's like he felt like he had to keep that trauma alive to keep their memory alive. So it's all in the way we kind of perceive things. And then, but yeah, practicing putting stuff down really does make a huge, huge difference, and realizing you can take time out to be happy. It doesn't mean that you're in denial. It doesn't mean that what happened to you is somehow okay. It doesn't mean that you're just, like over it. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that you're choosing for the next 10 minutes or 1 hour or 10 hours or however long that you're going to find some joy in your life, because this is how you're going to try to get power and control back over your experience and over your life. So So with that said, yes, people are signing off. Everybody's going to bed. And let me scroll up. So yes, so that, okay, with that said, thank you guys so much for joining the live stream as usual. If you're new to this, we do this every Wednesday night from starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go for about 3 hours ish, and I try to answer as many questions as I can. So let me thank you. I try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. And there's lots of support within the chat. And then I also have a support group. I have two. I have one on my website and I have one on Facebook. All of my contact info is on the About page in YouTube, or you can find me on my website, thriveafterabuse.com. And again, my name is Dana. I don't know if I'm terrible about introducing myself. I need to do that. But we do this every single week. So I hope to see you guys next week. And as always, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Have a fantastic week. And I will see you next week. Okay? Bye. And it's not letting me sign out. Oh my gosh. What's going on? What is going on? I don't know. Oh, it's funny. I knew it was too good to last. Technology. Me and